another Torah review. My name is Uzi Alewi. Early Shabbat Shalom to everyone out there. Giving glory to the Most High Creator of heaven and earth, Yehudah Zevaot. We thank Him for our lives, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything. We are here once again doing another Tanakh review, and this will be on the Haftarah Wayechi. Giving due respect to the leadership of the congregation, even my brother, Chief Prince Yediel Ben Yissaskar, that the Most High God continue to be with him, guide him and protect him, be with his family and his household. And we thank the Creator for all things and everything. We pray that the Creator will continue to be with our families and that He will guide and protect us. So, like I said, we will be going over our Torah Wayechi, and that will be reviewed by no other than Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehuda, one of my mentors and one of my teachers. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem.
Hallelujah.
First of all, I need to give praise to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and due respect to the platform on spiritual leader, Chief Prince Jerry on D.C.B platform, and also to the host, Chief Uzael, to the Princess, Chief Kohanim, Maureen, the rabbis, brothers and sisters, visitors, I greet you in the time of forefathers. Shalom Aleichem, and a very early Shabbat Shalom. First of all, I'd like to address some things. I was talking with a brother. Before I even do that, Adonai Septadi Takufi Yagich Yatheaka. Oh Lord, that my lips and my mouth should declare praise. I was talking to a brother afterwards concerning the Wayechi Sidra last week. And I just like to just go back at that one moment. And the subject matter was about, I said, Yehuda was the first person willing to sacrifice himself for another individual. And so the question is, they figure they all was willing to sacrifice themselves for Binyamin. And that was the subject matter, that they always willing to sacrifice themselves for Binyamin. But when I say Yehuda is willing to sacrifice himself, and that's the first time that you read about in the scriptures, is that they all was willing to be slaves along with Binyamin. So it's a difference when somebody say, all right, I'm going to go through the situation with you. It's another thing what Yehuda said was, take me and I'll deal with your situation while you go free. That was the uniqueness in Yehuda. He couldn't use the thing about his empathy with Pharaoh in reference to, I had the loss of two sons. He used that with his father, when he got ready to get Binyamin to go. But there's a lot of people that will work alongside you in your pain and your troubles. But as another one that say, I want to go through the torment and troubles in place of you. All right, so that is a paramount thing. And I guess that would make segues for other things later on. But basically, this is the actual issue. And the first time in scriptures in the Sidra Wayechi, where he said the rest of them could go back. All the other 10 brothers could go back. 11 brothers, 10 brothers could go back, and he would stay and endure whatever was in store for Binyamin, thinking it to be a hardship. So that's self-sacrificing. So that's why I say he's the first to do that, which is laudable because we're getting into Wayechi. Now, the Haftarah is going to be in the Book of Kings again. But before I speak about the Book of Kings, I like to go over some of the Sidra that's dealing with Wayechi. Now, one of the interesting things about Wayechi, just like Kaya Sarah, it seems like every time we talk about life, it's always about somebody going on, moving on, and making transition out this life. But the opening verse, and starts for those, I'm just going to summarize the whole thing, because I know I'm just going to gloss over it very briefly. that the actual scripture deals with the last years of Yaakov's life, Jacob's life. And Jacob blesses his sons, Joseph, and his grandsons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Jacob blesses all his sons. Joseph reassured his brothers that they will be safe and promised to provide for them and their family. And then Joseph dies, and he instructs his family before he dies to return his bones to the Holy Land. All right. So I like to focus on the opening just a little bit. And then that would be like Genesis 47th chapter, the 28th verse. It says, and Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the days of Jacob and the years of his life were 147 years. And the time drew near that Israel must die. And he called his son Joseph, and he said to him, if now I found favor in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. But when I sleep with my fathers, thou shalt carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said. And he said, swear unto me. And he swore unto him, and Israel bowed down upon their bedhead. Now, what's interesting, 17 years, and the scripture opened up with Wayechi, and he lived. So why use that term? And just say he was dwelling in the land of Egypt for 17 years. And then we say, well, and you know, but that seemed like it would be unnecessary to say, and he lived, when we know he's already there. And at the age of his death, we know what time he went there. So we got information that's given that's really not, would seem unnecessary on the surface. But what is real living? Yaakov's real life was entwined in the boys Joseph for 17 years while he dwelt with him. And his real enjoyment in life is when he was reunited with Joseph and dwelt there for 17 years. And we look at the numerical value, because Hebrew letters always have numerical values. You know, we call that Gematria. And the values of the letters stand for, enumerates, and it sums up to 34. So he actually, out of 147 years, he only really enjoyed life for 34 years. 17 years in support of Joseph, and 17 years of Joseph supporting him. So it's like a measure for measure, so to speak, in that area. But what I like to ask, you know, and maybe, you know, people might want to discuss even further, is why is it necessary when Joseph already agreed to bury Jacob, his father, in the land of Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah, where his father Abraham, his grandfather Abraham and his father Isaac was buried, and their wife. Well, if it seems like if a person is committed, he's gonna do that. So like Joseph is a man of his word. So why make him swear? Well, one of the things that's it could be discussed even further is that a lot of times, to say if we got to go somewhere important, say you have a daughter that's going to be married, and she said, I want you to march me down the aisle. So now this is your daughter. She live in one part of the country, and you live in another part of the country. And she's going to get ready to get married. And, the wedding going to take place in another part of the country. So let me straighten it out just a little bit. Your daughter going to get married in another part of the country, and she wants you to walk down the aisle. So now she's already at the place where she's going to get married. And you committed yourself as the father to walk her down the aisle. Now, you have all the intentions of the world to get on your plane, get on your flight, and go there and be in the wedding on time. But suppose the plane is delayed or canceled at the time of the wedding. Then what you do? You might go a day ahead to be sure. But when you swear something, that means that you look at all the variables, because now I can't have an excusable reason for not making it when you swear to something. That means right then and there that you got to provide every option available to be able to perform that particular act. And that's why even the first time you read about a servant swearing, which is Abraham's servant swearing to Abraham to go to his country, get a wife of his people. And, for Isaac, he said, what if she don't want to come? Because I'm going to do everything I need to do on my end. But what if she don't want to come? Then he said, be free from the earth, the oath. All right. So therefore, it was that kind of commitment. And that kind of commitment also Joseph used later on, as we know in the story with Pharaoh, when he said that. But we're going to go just a little bit further and say, well, why is it that Yaakov didn't want to be buried in Egypt? And then maybe we could get to a little bit further and into the story in the 48th chapter. And it came to pass after these things that one said to Joseph, behold, thy father is sick. And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And one told Jacob and said, behold, thy son Joseph cometh unto thee. And Israel strengthened himself and sat upon the bed. Now, what we have here is the first time we know that you read about Abraham as the first person that's called old. We know that Isaac not only was old, but he also the first man that had a first time you read about somebody having an eye problem. All right. And then he gets to Jacob. Not only he getting old, not only he has an eye problem, but it's the first time you read about anybody in scriptures ever being sick. And that's one of the things we like about Genesis, because you find a lot of firsts in the book of Genesis concerning to not that it's the first thing that ever happened in history. I don't know about what could happen worldwide in history, but I'm saying in the book that we try to gauge our life by, this is the first time you read about certain events, and usually the first time it occurred a lot of times is in the book of Genesis. But when Joseph brings his sons, you notice that and Israel strengthened himself and sat upon the bed. Why is that so important? Because usually a person so sick, they don't seem like they have anything. You got to hold their head up. Sometimes you got to spoon feed them. But Jacob showing that I'm strong enough. I'm under my right faculties at this point. This was so important. I'm under my right faculties, and I got enough strength to know the difference between reality and illusion, so to speak. Because now we know, you have different symptoms that we would think perhaps he's not in his right mind. Perhaps he can't see that well. Perhaps he's working on something else. All right. And Jacob said unto Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said unto me, behold, I will make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, and make thee a company of people. All right. Then it goes on further and said, and I will give this land to thy seed after thee, and for everlasting possession. And now thy two sons, who were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, before I came into the land of Egypt, are mine, Ephraim and Manasseh, even as Reuben and Shimon. You notice the word order right there. Shall be mine, and they shall issue. And I issue that thou gettest after them shall be thine. We don't know how many kids he might have had afterwards, but these are the ones he adopted as on the same level as other individual. And they shall be called after the name of their brothers and their inheritance. And as for me, when I came from Padam, Rachel died unto me in the land of Canaan in the way, when there was still some way to come unto Ephraim. And I buried her there in the way to Ephraim, the same as Bethlehem. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons and said, who are these? Before I go into the 9th verse, what is important here is that And, so and I hear people a lot of times say we have a dysfunctional family when we talk about the patriarchs. No, I beg to differ. We have some dysfunction in the family, but not a dysfunctional family. It's a difference between having dysfunction in the family, certain things don't work right, certain things don't go this way, as opposed to having a dysfunctional family, because a dysfunctional family would be give the connotation that you can't even exist as a family. We had issues through the patriarchs all the way down, but yet they still maintain a family. Everything wasn't 100% perfect in the family. You had some issues in the family, but having issues in the family helps a family grow when you get by those issues. So I just want to bring that out because a lot of times, I heard it more often than not that when we talk about, dysfunctional family, we think that the family was dysfunctional, but actually you can have dysfunction within a family, but yet the family still functions. But what is important here, I'd like to bring out is that Jacob asking of Joseph in the beginning to bury him in the land of Canaan, which is not a hop, skip, and a jump from where he is at now. And he talks about your mother, Raquel, that she died on the way, just a little ways before they get to Bethlehem, Ephrat, which is later on called Bethlehem, on the road, and he buried her on the way on the road in a field. So now, look at that situation. You made me swear to bring you up there, and yet you reminded me, not that I don't know, I was there, how you laid my mother to rest in a field. So Joseph had to go above and beyond the call, his emotions, if in that area, because I know he had to think about it being human, consider that being human, but yet his oath that he made him where he's compelled to do what his father asked him. And Jacob reminded, look, I know I didn't do that with your mother, but this is what I want you to do for me. Now, it's pretty strong. So, I'm looking at bringing out some issues that would shows and exemplify Joseph's character in some areas. And Israel behold Joseph's sons and said, who are these? And Joseph said these unto his father, they are my sons whom God had given me here. And he said, bring them, I pray thee, unto me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so they could not see. And he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, I have not thought to see thy face. Lo, God has let me see thy seed also. Well, if his eyes are heavy, that's the term he used, kabdul, which is heavy, his eyes, talking about his eyes being heavy. All right. And he said, I didn't think to see your face, but now I can see, I see your sons. What do you mean? He's going beyond just the physical sight of what it was there presently when he brought him closer. And then, mind you now, he'd been in the land of Egypt for 17 years at this particular time. So Joseph is basically, at this time, 56 years old. So he's not a young guy. He's 56 years old at this particular time when Yaakov is 147. So that means that the oldest guy, Reuben, couldn't be no more than 8 years tops. 8 years tops, older than Joseph. I would just say 7, but basically, if you want to stretch it a little bit, say 8 years tops older than Joseph at this time. So the oldest boy, Reuben, would only be about 7 years to 8 older than Joseph, who's 56 at this time when their father died. So it gives you a picture of the setting of these men at this particular time. And it goes further and say, And Joseph brought them from out between his knees, and he fell down on his face to the old earth. And Joseph took them both. All right. Ephraim in his right hand towards his towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh, he said, guiding his hands willingly. For Manasseh was the firstborn, and he blessed Joseph and said, all right, I just want to bring out a couple points right quick, and highlight a couple of things in that. One of the things I like to bring out is that you notice during this time, it's talking about Israel instead of Jacob, when it comes down to this particular blessing. And it talk about, Jacob in the beginning, then it come focus on Israel. Now, Jacob is the only patriarch that sometimes he's referred to as Yaakov or Jacob, and sometimes he's referred to as Yisrael or Israel. Only one. It depends on the circumstances there. When he come down to Egypt, going down to Egypt, it's basically Yaakov, Jacob, who's before Pharaoh and stuff like that, because he came down there in a sense for his physical needs. But Israel is more on a spiritual level. When we say, from the root Sar, which means, it could be used as a prince, but it also means one that as a champion, one that's victorious. So that's what he is, and it's victorious in which area? Over his spirit, because when he got that name, he was wrestling not only with a godlike being, what we tend to call an angel, but he also was wrestling with emotional issues. So we're just going to, I'm going to try to fast forward a little bit because only 12 verses in the Haftarah. And it said, let me see what boom, boom, boom. Okay. And it said so, and he blessed Joseph and said, the God before whom thy father Abraham and Isaac did walk, the God whom have been my shepherd all my life long unto this day, the angel who have redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named in them, and the name of my fathers Abraham, Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. And when Joseph saw that his father was laying his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it to please him, and he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a great people, and he also shall be great, howbeit his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. And he blessed them that day, saying, by thee shall Israel bless, saying, God made thee as Ephraim and Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said unto Joseph, behold, I die, but God will be with you and bring you back unto the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of Amorites with my sword and with my bow. All right. Several things I like to bring out. When Joseph heard the words, he's standing right there. He see that Jacob's hands on Ephraim. A seed that was crossed from the beginning. So why only after the blessing is somewhat completed that he had a problem? So those things to be discussed. I have various comments on reference to that. But it's only then. And then what's unique is that in the blessing, the word blessing itself should be in the plural, but it's in the singular. And Manasseh had no problem with his younger brother having a greater blessing. This is the first time you didn't have any jealousy over anything, between brothers, Manasseh and Ephraim. But I like to bring this point out. And you can always discuss it amongst your various teachers and various congregations. Is that Manasseh means, that I will forget, come from the root, I will forget my father in my father's house, in the toil of my father's house. Ephraim means that God had made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. So you say, okay, one means I'm forgetting the toil of my father in my father's house. The other one, I was fruitful in the land of my affliction. What is the difference? And what could we learn from that? So I just will share this point of view, and you could always discuss it more with your various teachers, is that Manasseh, forgetting the problems you have, and pushing them aside. Sometimes, sometimes that's good. That you could all be able to say, look here, I'm gonna push these problems aside and go ahead on and forget about it and just do what I got to do. I'm gonna leave these to the side. All right. In some cases, that might be good. In most cases, it's not good. But some rare cases, because we left Egypt, because we had problems down there in Egypt, so we finally left Egypt. All right. But then Ephraim represent the main body of what Israel should be about. Is that God made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. That means that I maintain my confidence, I maintain my progression, I maintain my prosperity, even in the land that's hostile to me. So what do that say for Israelites? Is that an Israelite being a light unto the world, that means you leaving a serene, comfortable environment. A good example is when we leave Shabbat every week and go to mix amongst the world and its concerns. As an Israelite, being a light into the world, that means you're leaving the comfort zone and trying to still be productive and fruitful. That's what it is. And Yaakov, in doing that and blessing Ephraim, not only from whatever vision he might have had, but also from the meaning of the name alone, is that this is what an Israelite mission should be. An Israelite mission should be that I might be in a bad situation, but I can make progress in that bad situation and be a help to somebody else in that situation. This is what Joseph did in the jail when he interpreted and helped and took concern for the butler's dream. All right, so this is what we got to learn from that. All right, so and like I said, you can always discuss it further with your various teachers, but the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh, notice that after Jacob said that, he still said he would bless according to Ephraim and Manasseh's name being first, Ephraim being first in that area. And as some people already know, that follows a particular tradition of Friday night, just before the Shabbat come in, that normally if you're going to say the blessing for the children, you use that particular formula and, Ephraim and Manasseh. Because first of all, you get ready to go into Shabbat. Second of all, the thing is that it shouldn't be, you might have more than one child. And third, the thing is that how did they maintain their identity when their mother's from a priest family and still identify themselves with Israel, whose occupation was shepherds? And that's what's unique about that these guys in a land that's contrary to our living style, they was able to maintain. One other thing I like to bring out too, what blessing Yaakov could give them monetarily, that they don't already have access to in the land of Egypt. Because Pharaoh told them, don't regard their stuff, come on down. They also told them, don't regard their stuff, come on down. All right, so, and he sent for them. And sent food for the travel there and travel back, and plus what they decided to pay for. So what we learned from that is that one of the great things is that maintaining your identity, most of us tend to hide our identity, be ashamed of our identity, because maybe some people might have, smudged our, our name out there here and there. But the thing is that when people meet you, then you got to be always the song you sing, the message you bring. That's what we used to say in BINAH Zakim. All right, so we're going to the 49th chapter, just a little bit. And it says, and Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which is before you at the end of days. All right. Now, the opening of the 49th chapter, I'd like to bring that out. What good is knowing the end of days if I'm not going to be there? That should be a question that should pop. Why I need to know what's going to happen at the last bit of times, the end of days. I'm not going to be at the end of days. That means the ends of times, the end of year, what you call the end of days. A week later, 5 years later, or the end when days no longer exist, or the last persecution, or the last exile of Israel. What do they mean by that? So a lot, that's always open for a lot of discussions too, but basically we would say concerning the different exiles and when there'd be the last exile, which we today are looking for, and considering this as the last time Israel will be spread out through the four corners of the earth. And then we're looking for that final return. But why tell them that when they're no longer going to live nowhere near close to that? We're being the descendants of those particular people. So if we go to Isaiah, for those people that might want to go there and look at it, in the 60th chapter, around about the 22nd verse, it would say that God will hasten the end of the days and his time. So what he's sharing with the people at the time is that in his particular time, if we do certain things, perform, wholeheartedly, return, determine in righteousness, then we could bring about that time where God will bring us back home quickly. But if we don't, then it'll be at the time the Creator desired to bring it. So that's why I say, in Isaiah, it will hasten, but it's based on us, how we implement our own living amongst one another, and as we approach toward the Creator. So now, assemble yourself and hear, sons of Jacob, and hearken to your father Israel. I'm just going to read a few of these. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm just going to stop at Yehuda, which everybody tend to stop at sometimes. But it says, Reuben, thou my firstborn, my might, and the first of my fruits, my strength, the excellence of dignity, and the excellency of power. Unstable as waters hast thou not the excellency. Have not thou the excellency, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed. Thou defilest it. He went up to my couch. All right. It's something that 34 years later, or give or take, 34 years later, that, and we don't know if it's actually 34, it could be even more, that Yaakov remembering and bringing up this situation. Now, what's the difference between the blessings in this particular case, other than Joseph's sons being separated when he was blessed, is that when he called all of them together to tell them what happened, his main thing was to tell them what's going to happen at the end of days, but some kind of way it got sidetracked a little bit when we examined the scriptures real tight. But what we learn is this, is that unlike Abraham, who didn't bless his children, unlike Isaac, who called them individually, Yaakov called all of them together. Like I said in the last chapter, when Jacob came down to Egypt, that was one of the great and the first real family reunions. All right, so he called the kids together on this here particular day. And he goes on to say, Simeon and Levi, our brother, and weapons of violence are their kinship. Let my soul not come into their counsel, to to their assembly, let my glory my glory not be united. For in their anger they slew a man, and their self-will they hauled an oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So one of the things is this. Reuben, it didn't sound that well at first for Reuben. All right. And plus all this is being told in front of all the rest of the brothers. Simeon himself, we know I spoke about it earlier that Jacob didn't address the actual, moral issue of the problem at the time that they destroyed the people of Shechem. But, he addressing that issue, and it's never sat well with him, even on his deathbed. See, one of the things is because his name, and that's why he mentioned about his name, because if you make an agreement, even though y'all spoke deceitfully, they going by the head of the household, which is me, under my name. So it took an offense at that. And one of the things I brought out before in reference to that is that you have Jacob, excuse me, you got the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Shimon and Levi, that, after they circumcised themselves on the third day, when they were circumcised, they went out to slay them. Simeon and each one took their sword. Now I wonder if they decide to have a council about it. I don't know. Or one guy coming out the other door and say, I'm gonna start this thing myself, and another guy coming out another door and they happen to meet and say, where you going with the sword? I don't know. But one of the things is that there was an agreement when they met up. And like I said before, to execute judgment on two different issues. One could take it personal, and the other one would take it universal. And one could say, this is my sister. The other one could say, that's a daughter of a father, in a human being. So I leave that for y'all to further discuss on that area. But he cursed the anger. But if they're that bad, why scatter them in Israel? That means sometimes you need a certain type of righteous indignation. So you need that sprinkling. Now, we know later on that even in the blessings of Moshe, that Shimon is not mentioned directly in that whole series. But him and Levi is mentioned together. And I'm going to just touch on that just a moment as you go through. All right. And then it goes to the last one. Judah, thee shall thy brethren praise. Thy hand shall be on the neck of thy enemies. Thy father's son shall bow down before thee. Judah's a lion's well. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couches as a lion. As a lioness, who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. As long as men come to Shiloh, and unto him shall be the obedience of the people. All right. Binding his foe unto the vine, and his ass coat unto the choice vine. He watches his garment in wine, and his vestures in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. That last part I just want to bring out is that a lot of people had the stereotype that Judahites are like wine biblicalists, drunkards. And you can't be praised and honored by your brothers if you're like that. Judah exemplified himself early in life. After the sale of Joseph, you see he went down from his brethren, got into a little something, but he was able to pull up out of that. And what's great about that is that a person that never slipped, never mess up in life, you don't know if they're qualified if drama hit. If a situation is bad, they can't even identify with a bad situation if they never encounter a bad situation where the controversy comes up with Job. According to the story, it's not for nothing that Job is okay. I mean, you got a hedge about him, everything going good, but let things get bad. Could he come up out of that? Yehudah was able to come out of a bad situation. So much so that even David, what made David a man after God's own heart? it's not because he didn't mess up. It's when he messed up, he knew a broken heart and a contrite spirit, God will not despise. So hence, it's about our making it in a bad situation and coming and rising above our circumstances. This would exemplify Yehudah. And it says not only that, it said all your brothers will praise you. And it's not just one, not just two. Everybody would, have that kind of respect for you. All right. So the last thing I'd like to go into the bottom of that, the 28th verse of that particular chapter. It says, and these were the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is it, that their father spoke unto them and blessed them. Everyone according to his blessing, he blessed them. All right. And he charged them and said unto them, I am to be gathered to my people, bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham brought with the field from Ephraim the Hittite for possession of a burying place. All right. So he knew not only the family history, but the same thing he made Joseph swear to him. He told the rest of them that. But Joseph is obligated to do that. Just like Yehudah was responsible for Benjamin, Joseph is responsible for this being carried out. And in the last chapter, it says, it goes on to say, we're in the 33rd verse of the 49th chapter. And when Jacob made an end of his charge and his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed and aspired and was gathered unto his people. Important thing to be considered there. But one of the things I like to say, when he gathered up his feet and lay down his bed, it seems like he still has some strength into the end. So it don't seem like he died tired in that area. But one of the things I'd bring out in reference to this here is that when he brings out about where he want to be buried at, and he brings out about the history of it. I mean, most of us don't have a will. Most of us just pass off the scene. Some of us might not have no insurance. Some of us don't even consider about where we want to be, our bodies want to be rested at. That's a serious thing for Israelites, because I think most Israelites believe they're going to live forever. And if they realize they're not going to live forever, they don't make preparations, to get their household in order. But one of the things is that the blessings, everybody, sometimes they don't look at the blessings was Reuben. They don't look at that as a blessing. They don't look at Shimon and Levi as a blessing. When it tell you at the end of that thing that Jacob blessed everybody, all his children, sometimes the blessing is known when you're weak at, where you got your faults at. Fix that over there. You'll be all right. And you notice with Reuben, the first one that had, had the rough situation that was addressed to him, we noticed that Reuben, when it had 6 tribes on one mountain and 6 tribes on another mountain, Reuben himself, the tribe of Reuben, was on the side. When they say he that's sleeping with his father's wife, cursed be he, and everybody should say amen. Reuben's on that mountain. He had to say that. So that means that he condemned what he thought was okay. And and like I said, and it's not a new thing what Reuben did, because he figured before the law is given, as with the prohibitions here and there in our book. In ancient times, that was an acceptable norm. It was so much of an acceptable norm that when we read, in the book of Kings, that Adonai said, "Look, give me the woman that the Shunammite that was with my father, give me her." And they told Solomon's mother, Bathsheba, to ask for the woman that David didn't know, but try to warm him up. And Solomon said, why not ask for the kingdom? Because that was a custom way back in those times. So sometimes you have to, find out the ancient customs of the people, civilizations around them, and different civil laws. We have certain ritual laws, and then we have civil laws. So some nations had perfect civil laws, but they also had some corrupt civil laws because they're subject to change over a period of time. But the custom, Solomon recognized it by his request of his own brother, asking for a woman that his father had in his lifetime. So now we're just going to go into the 50th chapter, just a little bit. It said, and Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept and wept upon it and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. And 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are fulfilled the days of embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. All right, I'm just going to skip through that a little bit, and then we're going straight into the Haftarah, right quick, which is only 12 verses. One of the things about the embalming process, and I hear a lot of different people about embalming and stuff like that. Normally, some of us will get buried within the day. The most is 3 days. Depends if it's a Shabbat, they won't bury on the Shabbat. And if it's a holy day, say like a Yom Teruah or Pesach, then the next secular day, you'll be buried. So the most of them might be up above the ground. You know, certain traditions, you know, some of us, is, you know, it's 3 days. And they keep you on ice that long and put you in the ground. Now, what the difference is, is that embalming was necessary, but there was in Egypt, and it wasn't been a hop, skip, and a jump to bring his body back. And what we find here, which in the last chapter of Genesis, you know, I mean, we find the word coffin used, and you find the word coffin used only concerning Joseph, which is Aaron, you know, which is referred to as a coffin. Next time you see that term you use it, you find it with Moshe, put in Aaron an ark, all right, or a closet, little chest. And that's the next time you see that particular word used in reference to somebody being put inside anything. But let's deal with the 70 days. Now, traditionally, rabbinic tradition, because they find and take it from scriptures pretty much, is that you got 30 days of mourning, like 30 days of mourning for Moses, 30 days of mourning for Aaron. And, you know, it was like 30-day period that's, you know, they mourn for Yaakov. But let's look at this here area. You have a tradition where you says Shiva, which is 7 from the root of 7. And I'm not saying, I'm just bringing out some insight in passing, is that Shiva itself is the most strictest part. When a loved one just had passed and you just had buried him, then you said Shiva for 7 days. All right. Then you go to a different level, you know, because during the Shiva time, unless it's coming to a holy convocation, you tend to not go there. I mean, you break the Shiva to go out to the, you know, Shabbat. If Shabbat come in within 7 days, which it will be, then, you know, you change your demeanor and go to the Shabbat, but you don't participate in everything, but you participate strongly as much as you can. And then you continue till you finish the 7 days. Then you go to a different mourning period, which is a 30-day mourning period, which is a lot more relaxed. And then after that, they pretty much say Kaddish, which is basically, you know, uplifting the ones that's actually saying it more so. And they say that for 11 months. That's a rabbinic tradition. All right. Now, some people, I understand that some people might think about why Joseph kissed Yaakov when he passed. Even by our law, strictest law, if you did when he passed in front of you, you're inside this enclosure. You're inside this enclosure here. So once the person gave up the yield up the breath of life, anything in there is unclean, including Joseph, who's right there. So he's not getting any more unclean than he's already is. And Yaakov itself, we don't know what kind of compartment they might have put him in. You know, but and I doubt if they would have. I doubt it if they embalmed him so long that they would put him in a coffin. I think they might have just wrapped him up. That's it. You know, this just, you know, Crown Prince Zurishaddai bringing that out, but most that he would be wrapped up and carried. Now, burying is what we tend to do as Israelites. Cremation is something we tend to frown on, and that's simply because you read where even the Creator buried Moshe. All right, you read where Abraham buried his wife. First time you read about burial. We don't read of anything a cremation for the dead. Nowhere in our scriptures. So for us as a practice. So I know some people take the cheap route out. Some people might have the will, and some people in their family, whether they acknowledge themselves or not. But that's not what we do, because it's like respecting the remains of an individual. That's what it is. And if you have a strong enough respect, you usually burn something you have no respect for or discard to a degree. All right, unless it's like say you're offering up a sacrifice and they tell you a burnt offering. The Kohen don't even get nothing of a burnt offering. Now other offerings you get a piece of it, you get part of this and part of that, but a burnt offering is complete, consumed. And that's considered one of the most strongest of the sin offerings in that area. All right. So now the last thing I want to bring out is about so you read about coffins here, and you read about Joseph seeing several generations, and they also Machir, the son of Manasseh, were born into Joseph's knee. All right. So a lot of times when we say 430 years in Egypt, we could go by the chronological generations. That it's basically only going to be 4 generations, so 400 years is a number that's given in Exodus for, we're talking about 430, and there's a lot of ways they can consider calculating that. But we know it is there for 4 generations because we get the names, which are coming up in the next Sidra in the book of Shemot. And normally, I like to say, normally when you finish a particular book, they always say, Kazak, Kazak, when Nikwazay, be strong and strong, and let's make one another strong. All right, so, and we have, if you look at the last word in these Sidra, the first 5 books, all right, the last word, like, say, like Egypt, that's the last word in Genesis. Journey is the last word in Exodus. Sinai, the last word in Leviticus. Jericho, the last word in Numbers. And then you got what they call Israel, the last word in Deuteronomy. You have a story of the nation of Israel, going down to Egypt, the journeys in, the reaching Sinai, the episode at the banks of Jericho, and then finally they get ready to go into Israel. So we get a real summary, hasikum, as they say, in Hebrew, hasikum, which means a summary. All right, we get a real summary of the events from each of one of the last books. All right, so I'm going to the Haftarah, which is the First Kings, and I'll be it's only 12 verses. And one of the things about I'm still talking about King Solomon's, and we read earlier with Sarah. When we read about Sarah, we dealt with the first part of First Kings, in relationship to Abraham trying to secure his future, and David trying to establish the throne of his son Solomon, with a lot of intrigues going on. Now we're in the second chapter of the book of Kings, first verse, and there's going to be 12 verses there. And this is how it starts off. And, and so this is what the Haftarah for Wayechi. So like I said before, 2 parts of David's life is associated with some of the patriotic periods. And both of them had to do with Kaye and Wayechi. So since we had that, we'll go first chapter. First verse, second chapter of First Kings.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
We're in the book of First Kings, chapter 2, starting from verse 1. And it reads, Now the days of David drew nigh that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go the way of all the earth. Be thou strong, therefore, and show thyself a man.
Oh, right here. So that means right in there. Sometimes to execute judgment, to be just in judgment, you got to be strong about that. All right. But unlike Jacob, who's trying to tell his sons what's going to happen in the end of days and also blessing them, Dawi, on the other hand, has a different situation. Most people in the synagogues always look at this as the Godfather story with Don Corleone and all of that. About when I go, this is what you got to do. Don't forget so and so, take such and such out. So that's what most synagogues look at this here as the Godfather, the hitman story, the gangster story and stuff like that, which is a sad thing as a tribute to David's life, because he knows that he left a lot of stuff undone. And being he left a lot of stuff undone as a king, he wanted his children. I mean, he left the job to his son, when that's something he should have did in his time. But and he had to regret for that. So imagine going with regret. Third verse.
Verse 3 reads, "And keep the charge of Yehudah thy God to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes and his commandments and his ordinances and his testimonies, according to that which is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest, and whithersoever thou turnest thyself."
All right there. You notice it says written in the law of Moses. We'd say, well, isn't this the law of God that we follow? Why is the law of Moses? Because not only he gave us exactly what the Creator said, but he had to cause us to learn and teach us this certain things. So therefore, we're getting his breakdown, his expounding. That's why you got various teachers in various congregations. Everybody got the same book in front of them, but everybody don't have the same understanding of the different verses in the book. So same thing with in Ezra's time, during the Second Commonwealth. Though some spoke part Aramaic and part Ashdod, yet 15 guys expounding, what this means, and where it's a breakdown. All right, so here it is that is referred to as the law of Moses. You find that several times within scriptures. And the fourth verse, it says,
Verse 4 reads, "That Yehovah may establish his work which he spoke concerning me, saying, if thy children take heed to their way, to walk before me in truth with all their heart and with all their soul, they shall not fail thee, said he, a man on the throne of Yisrael."
In other words, do this for me. I mean, I ain't handling my job. I can't secure it. You already told me about things going on that I didn't have an idea what's going on. My son already thought he was a king, and then you had a general over here, you got this here priest over there, and you got BINAH, you got Nathan that's plotting the scheme, you got Bathsheba plotting the scheme. All this going with, I don't have any knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes, and I do what I need to do to establish you as a king now. But it's still, even if I'm gone, you're gonna still have some problems if you don't straighten certain things out. So that's why it reminds them of law. In other words, just don't move haphazard. But it's some things, in order to establish the throne, I've been saying I failed and part of my duty. Now imagine that, a father telling you that they haven't completed their assignment. They had some dereliction of duty in their life, and you're looking for your son to pull you through on that and handle that. All right, so just like Solomon got to do something for his father, Joseph was entrusted to do something for his father. Out of all the sons, knowing that he wanted to be buried there, it was Joseph's job to make sure it's carried through. All right, so picking up from the 5th verse.
Verse 5, "Moreover, thou knowest also what Joab the son of Zeruiah did unto me, even what he did to the 2 captains of the host of Israel, unto Abner the son of Ner, and unto Amasa the son of Yeter, whom he slew and shed the blood of war in peace, and put the blood of war upon his girdle that was about his loins, and in his shoes that were on his feet."
All right there. Now, that sounds very descriptive. That sounds like, some of us see these martial arts movies where a guy might slay somebody and then, with the blood and lick the sword, or stab somebody and lick that, and whatever the case is, which is gross. But some people, when they describe Joab, it's like, I'm not even going to clear my sword. Most people that watch Japanese movies normally that most time when they finish a battle, they clean their sword, even if they had to flick it in the air to get the majority of the blood off. But Joab, they had no qualms about, all right, I just slayed this individual. I'm going to put this back in the scabbard. And even if it dripped, they know that I'm a killer. So he comes with that kind of megalomaniac type attitude in battle. This was Joab. And he said in times of peace. So he killed 2 guys in time of peace and, snuck them pretty much, stole them, as we say in the streets. And David, he was so powerful that David didn't handle him at that time. All right, so, and I always ask people to, just read the story of David pretty much when before the kingdom was united. But keep going, 6th verse.
Verse 6, do therefore according to thy wisdom, and let not his hoar head go down to the grave in peace, but show kindness unto the sons of Barzillai, the Gileadite, and let them be of those that eat at thy table, for so they drew nigh unto me when I fled from Absalom thy brother.
All right there. All right. Right there. Now, these are people from the tribe of Manasseh. That's who they are. And they looked out for David when he was on the run from Absalom. All right. So these are Israelites. And, it says Gileadites, from the descendants of Machir, and this from the tribe of Manasseh itself. All right. So I just want to, so those that might want to read more about that episode, got to go over in the 2 Samuel's around 17th chapter about these particular individuals. All right. So we pick it up from, and it says, so he gave you the chapter 8.
Verse 8, it reads, and behold, there is with thee Shimei, the son of Gerah, the Benjamite of Bahurim, who cursed me with a grievous curse in the day when I went to Machanaim, but he came down to meet me at the Jordan. And I swore to him by Yehodah, saying, I will not put thee to death with the sword. Now therefore, hold him not guiltless, for thou art a wise man, and thou wilt know what thou oughtest to do unto him, and thou shalt bring his whole head down to the grave with blood.
Hold right there. Let me put it there. How he know he gonna do something wrong? He said, look, I need you to find something that he gonna mess up in. That would be somewhat he would agree to. That's be the subtle distinction. Because if I swore not to kill him, I'm gonna bring his head down in blood, but yet I left a last will and testament to make sure this guy go out to, be taken out. Then what I'm saying is that, all right, you're wise. Find a way where it can be justified. Now, this is our ancestors. So is that deception? Is that trying to ensnare an individual? Is that putting a stumbling block before the individual? These are serious things. Now, this is a king, the man after God's own heart, but yet it was certain things he didn't address in his time. And who forced him to swear? So those things should be considered. And that's what I'm saying, is open for more discussion amongst the various schools and thoughts. I continue.
Verse 10, and David slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. And the days that David reigned over Israel were 40 years. 7 years reigned he in Hebron, and 33 years reigned he in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat upon the throne of David, his father, and his kingdom was established firmly. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So that sums up. So sometimes, you can leave your works to your children, but certain things you should handle yourself and leave less work for your children. And just like Joseph was 56 when his father died, but 54 years later, which make him 110, that's when he died. So he did 54 years after his father. And all the brothers didn't die at the same time. That's why later on, we going to it, you read about, Joseph died and all that generation. So all that generation would be his contemporaries. So even though Joseph was young, Joseph died kind of early compared to the rest of the brothers that was older than him. All right, so I hope you got something out of what I said. I know we're kind of fast in one area and took a little long time in another area, but any mistakes been my own. And then any questions, just leave it in the comments and stuff like that, and I'll try my best to address it.
Hold on. I got some questions.
All right.
So my first question is this, and in reference to the Haftarah.
Okay.
So David commanded Solomon not to let Joab, old head go down into the grave in peace, right?
Right.
Basically bring some drama to him, make him be unsettled, make him die, maybe a violent death or whatever. So, but for one of the incidents, and one of the incidents that David mentioned was Abner, right? For what he did to Abner, the general of the Israelite army at that point. Some people will look at it as Joab had the rights to kill Abner in reference or in terms of the avenger of blood because of what Abner did to his brother. I believe it was Asahel.
Asahel. Yeah, the best man in Israel.
So, what is your opinion on that? And do you think that King David was right for using? We understand Amasa. Amasa was a straight up murder. But what Abner, and I'm just throwing that out there, was that a straight up murder, or was that him applying the judgment of the avenger of blood, and Abner not being in the city of refuge and all of the different components that go with someone who slays someone? What's your opinion on that?
All right, one, it was war times. You only go to the city of blood when you ignorantly kill an individual with no intentions. It was intention for Abner to kill Asahel. And if I recall the story correctly, he told him to go back and get one of the young men on armor. Right. And he also told him that, how can I look your brother in the face? Because we might be fighting now, but we ain't gonna fight forever in that area. So it was a battlefield and it was a war going down. And that's why David said in a time of peace, because at the time now, he's no longer an enemy. It's already a truce. Abner is responsible for bringing the rest of Israel to David at that time. And so, because a lot of people still was looking at the house of Saul and the descendants of Saul. So so Abner also pleaded with the guy on the run. So therefore, it was in battle and defense of his life. And then the way it was is that if I hit you with the back of the spear, not even with the blade, that means that not only you coming too fast and too hard on me, I still have second thoughts about sticking you. Because he could have just turned around and hit him with the blade part of the spear. But it was with the back of the spear and it went through him. So that means that he's coming hard and he's swinging hard. So Abner could run and talk a little bit too. So he's not a lightweight guy. So and so it was doing stealth that Joab slew Abner when he already had made an agreement with David. So he disrespected the king.
So then I guess my follow-up question will be, how can you quell that spirit, being that you know that this is the guy who killed your brother? How could King David have quelled that spirit? Because Asahel was also his nephew. I guess, King David had already gotten over that part of it, and he understood that it was war times and that in wars you're going to have casualties. But how can, for example, like your brother, someone kills your brother, how can you be in good terms or in good favor with a person that you know killed your brother, although it was in war?
Right. Well, let's look at the thing about when they brought Jacob's body into the land. All right. And on the way back, the brother said, our father told you to forgive your servants and all that kind of stuff. We don't read that. Now, I don't know if it's a truth. I don't know if they just made it up. Some people don't think it's the truth, and some people think it's made up.
Right.
But I brought out in YAH that when they told their father prior, that the man asked us straightly about the family, when they thought they gave up so much information, they talked to the man right then, and then he could say, I never said anything like that when Judah brought that up. So we don't know what's all the hidden stuff behind the scenes. The book be brief in some areas and strong in another area. But one of the things is that if you're out to battle, if you're out there battling, and you know that life and death could be, weighed in the balance, then you have to come over with Joseph. You never read where Joseph said, clearly, I forgive you. He always attribute their act as a divine act from God only, and he didn't give him not one credit for his situation. And he never liked the situation, but he never gave his brothers not one credit. And he say, okay, I'm on, there's other things you brought up about, I would take care of you and I'm gonna feed you and your family. So that brings out another issue. Why would you feed them if this famine should have been over? I left that out on purpose for people to discuss later on. But so with Joab itself, he posted, and then there's another thing too. Abner was an Israelite for sure. Straight up Israelite.
Right.
Amasa was an Israelite for sure.
Right.
Straight up Israelite.
Right.
Those sons of David's sister, Zeruiah, we don't know who they were, who's their father. We don't have an inkling who their father were. So now you got, and we know David had outsiders working for him. Dino the Techmonite and all these mighty men that you read about in the book of Samuel. Those guys, you're right. Those were outsiders in his army that fought on his behalf. So being an outsider at one thing, even if you might be family, you might have married into the family. Because you figure Bathsheba supposed to be married to Uriah the Hittite. How is like daughter married to the Hittite? How that happened?
Right.
So definitely, how do you have a daughter married to somebody outside of the nation of Israel? So we don't not sure, who's those three sons, Abishai, Asael, and Joab, who their father is for sure. Some might say they might be Ishmaelites and whatever. I don't know. But in any event, all you ever hear about is they going under their mother's name and never their father's name. So that would give you a little suspicion about the origin, where Abner we know clear is an Israelite and a Benjamite. We know that Amasa is clear an Israelite and a Benjamite. So therefore, David supposed to secure Israelites as a king.
Got you.
And when he hung up with Philistines, he never fought Israelites. He always fought other guys, raided other camps, but never Israelites.
Got you. So now, and the same, staying with the Haftarah, 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 8, and behold, there is with thee Shimei, the son of Gerah, the Benjamin of Bahurim, who cursed me with a grievous curse in the day when I went to Machaniah, right? But he came down to meet me at the Jordan, and I swore to him, by Yehudah, saying, I will not put thee to death with the sword. But it goes on and he tells Solomon basically the same thing. Don't let him go down into the grave in peace. So the question would be for those who read the life of King David and all of the ups and downs that he had, and counting the children of Israel, and the adultery that was committed with Bathsheba, and some of the those are the two, I guess, major things that he did. Some people would say God showed him mercy and forgave him, right? Why in this instance, yes, Shimei cursed him. Why would he not show Shimei mercy, being that he was shown mercy in terms of the sins that he committed, and he was still able to be alive and to be king in Israel? in turn, why didn't he show Shimei mercy and not leave that assignment to King Solomon and just not give him a pass, being that he was shown mercy in his life? Some people would think that like almost like vengeance, having vengeance and just never forgetting and holding like a grudge. What's your opinion on that?
Well, our heroes got their flaws on both sides and everything, but if we try to look at it a little bit closer, and let's look at the situation. I didn't turn to the chapter, but just from the top of my head, it was one in I think Abishai, somebody wanted to slay Shimei at that particular time.
Yes, he did.
Because he not only was cursing David, I think he threw stones at David as well.
Right.
So and David said perhaps this might be from God or something like that there, because he was on the run at that particular time. So that and being also that guy had to be from Benjamin, and the word Bakurim is like with the chosen ones. So he's from a place that you had the elite at. And so since you are from a place of a prominent spot, a Bakurim, which is the elite, the chosen ones at that particular spot, say, well, okay, I'm already running from King Saul. I'm already running from King Saul, and perhaps if I spare him, then I got some have some mercy. But he said it was some grievous words that he said to him that day. And is worthy of a death penalty. So he never said that he would not exact vengeance, if I'm correct from that particular thing. He just said he would not put him to the sword and held him accountable. That's why he told Solomon, "You're wise man, find out something that he might mess up." That's why I brought out the thing. Is it a snare? Is he setting them up? Putting a stumbling block before the blind, or what? In reference to that Shimei.
I hear you, and it could have been an ongoing thing that the people closest to David that witnessed it might have just kept. You know how like something happens, and people kind of keep bringing it up to you and keep bringing it up to you and keep, hey, what you gonna do about that guy? We didn't, he didn't leave a good taste in our mouths. He kind of got one over on you. What are you gonna do? That's the only thing I could think of, because it just seemed like that was random.
Well, just 1 year longer than well, it's 33 years later, pretty much.
Right.
Give or take. It's 33 years later. We know that because you only dwelt over Hebron. But the thing was that the guy is a Benjamite. Right. Benjamites have the power.
Right.
And like I said, the name, is the chosen ones. All right. So
got you.
And so it's a political thing at jeopardy at the time.
Power play.
It's always political. Yeah, it's always a good power play in that sense. Because even Joab threatened after the death of Absalom that what you mourning for? You gonna mess around with
basically,
the king.
I'll take it over if you don't want it. Yeah. That's what he told him in so many words, Yeah.
So that's a serious, So he had to tread lightly, not so much even for himself directly, but the consequences of the nation. And just like Jacob, he was afraid of Esau because what he might do to his family. He himself said, well, if it battle, I battle. And some people think that he divided his family up, but he didn't divide his family up. He just divided the camps up. All his family was in one camp. It's just that he separated, that handmaids of Zilpah, then the handmaids of Bilhah, then Leah children, and then Raquel, in that order, and droves rather. But they all was in one spot, because you can't even strategically talk about, I'm gonna see how the family doing over here, the family over there.
Right.
And he passed on before them.
So my next question is this: how do you look at this? Was Joab to King David a necessary? I'm going to use this word. Maybe you might not agree with it. Was he a necessary evil?
Well, now that'd be a hard one, man, Chief. You know, not a hard one because, you know, the thing is, he was in place and he did a lot. Matter of fact, he the one that actually made it up the waterway to get to become a general. And so strategically, and the thing is that you ask me these questions, I'm sure some viewers may not read all the different parts of the book that you know we tend to read as regular as Israelites, but you know, and I guess that's maybe one of our strong points, that we read those little sections in the book, and can analyze the more and apply moral law or the laws of God in each every situation, and which is a good thing, you know, and a plus for us in that area. But you know, he did a lot, you know what I mean, to secure, you know, and got the Jebus, because Jerusalem was never fully conquered without Joab's help.
Right.
You know what I mean? So and so, you know, Joab earned, after he got rid of a lot of competition, you know, he earned the right to be the general for a moment. And so he's a warrior, and that was good in his spot. Not that he was the best warrior, but he was strategic, and he was somewhat family, and also he had a lot of influence because all his brothers was known. So you know, I mean, that says, you know, volumes that he used them for war. Now, politically, he really didn't want to use them because it's like some people is good for this situation only. I'm going to battle, you good. Other than that, we don't need you around. Shimon and
you're just gonna cause chaos.
And a good example, and when Yehudah went to conquer, get his plot of land, he asked Simeon to come with me. Right. So he wanted to tribe of Simeon to come with him. And Simeon territory is intermingled with Yehudah territory. You know, and then according to tradition, they say they became scholars because now you with guys that's dealing with law, and you're around people that deal with the Kohanim, the priesthood. So you become scholars on both sides. So tradition say they became scholars in Israel, but they had no one solidified territory. So they actually split up, and Levi was split up even further in that area.
So then my next question is, during no, I had a question that someone brought something up to me, totally different subject, because we could go on and on about the history. We love history, like you said. The schools we come from, we love history. So that
it helps you a lot when you analyze the different characters in scriptures, and then you try to say, well, what is moral, what's going on, and whether it's lawful, what's not lawful, what's an amendment to a law. You know, and I don't like to say all the time amendment. I always say a cancellation, you know, I mean, or suspension, rather, not cancellation, a suspension of a law, because just like the Maccabees did suspend about what they do in the Shabbat, you know, so, and with the daughters of Zelophehad, it was an addition, not so much an amendment, but an addition, because it didn't change what was already previous. All it did was add another variable.
It added something else, right? No, what's interesting in this same Haftarah portion in verse 3, 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 3, because someone asked me this question before. Someone asked this question before in terms of, oh, where do we get that the Torah is the law of Moses, right? And I know, you know, and they were like, oh, that's not an Israelite concept. That's more of a quote unquote, you know, Jewish concept, but it comes from the Europeans. But now I'm reading it here. It brought back, it says, and keep the charge of Yehudah thy God to walk in his ways and to keep his statutes and his commandments and his ordinances and his testimonies according to that which is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest, and whithersoever thou turnest thyself. So the person who asked me that question before, who asked that question, there you go. Yeah. That's the law of Moses.
No, but it's written even back in the book of Joshua too. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
I
right.
know, it's written in the book of Joshua as well. So we don't have to even go that far back.
Right.
And he uses that exact same term.
Right. The law of
Where the Creator
Moses.
exactly right, yeah, where the Creator told them, to follow the law of Moses. And let me see if I can find that particular verse while we add it right quick. I know it's in the early part of the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We'll find it. You know what I mean? We'll
Right.
find it. I have another question. Someone shot this question at me. And the question was in terms of the season that's coming up in the Gregorian calendar for most of the
Express.
people. Yeah,
Yes.
Xmas. So they were they were Christians, and they said that sometimes it's hard to because during this time is when they have most of their fondest memories with their families, meaning they gathered with family, all family were together, great moments, and all of that. It's not that they cannot get rid of the whole the idolatry
Constant
part of
idea.
it, but it's the memories that come up when they begin to hear the songs and all of the things that are associated with the season that bring back those memories. And they gave me they asked me a question: how do you get rid of that feeling, or how do you progress from that when everything around you is bombarded and you're bombarded with the whole Xmas spirit and the music and all of that during this season? So what answer would you give someone like that? I gave them an answer,
All
but
right.
you and them go.
Encouragement, acts of encouragement, and stuff like that. The answer is clear. I mean, either believe in it or you don't. That's the answer.
Right.
That's clear. Encouragement is this: is how committed are you all? Because most Israelites grew up in that. That's first generation Israelites. When I say first, they came in like I wasn't born in knowledge of myself. I came in very young, but I wasn't born in knowledge of myself at that area. And a lot of people, a lot of Israelites, I know might not have been born into that situation. And some of them that was born in it, it's strange that they tend to kind of swerve that way a little bit after a process of time. But it's your commitment to doing what is right, because everything had to start somewhere in your life. All right. So when if you say, well, okay, when a person reaches puberty, their body change. All right. And they call that, say, it's a sign of beginning to mature. So we got to reach puberty in our life about issues and concept. If you cannot grow in your ideology, then your ideology is not adequate for you to live in. Torah, we say we grow in it. We never outgrow it. We grow in it. So if it's about the creator and the concept, all right, then you got to say, okay, everybody coming together, everybody singing about meeting over here, meeting over there. Then you could say, all right, I'm going to establish a meeting time for this here myself. The days you might observe. What's it saying? Tell people come over this week on Hanukkah. We're going to have food. We're going to talk about different issues and history and matters and stuff of that nature. All right. What's the matter with telling people come around for Sukkot? So we're going to have in the booth. We're going to be outside. We're going to be eating and enjoying ourselves in the festive moment. What's the matter about Pesach? I said we got a strange diet this particular time of year, but during the Chag, I want you to come on by and try this here and listen to some of the talks that go on. All right. Most. A lot of Israelites, I would say, I won't say most, but I say a lot. A lot of Israelites don't bring that extended invitation to people during our particular times, whereas other people bring an extended invitation about their times. And you say, well, how is it that we don't extend invitations, and then sometimes we may even make it hard on our own membership in various congregations to attend? So we got to look at those particular issues. Do you make it hard for your very members and your own very congregation to attend? whether it's financial, whatever the case is? Do you be a more accommodating? So the thing is that those people that go through it, they got to make a choice, a conscious choice within themselves to say what matters most, and then try to implement something where they could be, inviting. Because from what I'm hearing, is they are being invited instead of they inviting. And if you're the one that's inviting, then things should be on your terms. If you're being invited, then you're subjected to whoever's house you go or place you're going to.
Got you. Yeah, because it's like I said, like I'm one of those Israelites that started very young at 13. I think about the same age that you started.
Well, I guess they're about mitzvah age, so I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah. So I know that and like I explained to the person, it's like, the first couple of years was difficult, being that it was a whole feeling that came with that. I said, but I had to learn. And what I did is I learned to despise everything that is contrary to Torah. So if it's contrary to Torah, I despised it. Just like I ate pork before I came into this way of life. And I like certain things from pork or whatever, but then I learned to despise it. I ate shrimps and I learned to despise it. So it is with everything, anything that has to do with something that's contrary and that will put me against Torah, I just learned to despise it. And that's the way that I approach it. Now, everyone approaches different, but that was my approach. That's the way that I got over certain things. When I want to get over certain things, I just learned to despise it and not go back to it and not step into that realm again. So,
well, I think that's a little strong for most people, but I mean,
I know, but that's the way I dealt with it.
Right. But one of the things, just the Chief Foods brought that out. I just want to bring out this proverb. I forget exactly where it is. I'll probably look it up next time. It says, "If you're given to appetite, put a knife to your throat." Now that is serious. In the Proverbs, if you're given to appetite, put a knife to your throat.
Yeah.
So that means that you threaten yourself with life and death by slitting the throat. And so it didn't tell you to slit your throat. It says put a knife to your throat. Just the threat of it. So it's how much you want to really, try to serve the Creator, and in serving the Creator, you're actually improving yourself and strengthening yourself. It's almost like it's security, for leadership. And it's one of the things I was saying when we go to pray on Shabbat and congregate on Shabbat, and said Shabbat keep us more than we keep it. Is why we're told to observe the Shabbat and guard it. One time it says keep, one portion says, keep it, and others, observe it. Shomer, guard it. And so why the guard? Told to keep it holy and told to guard it. So now the guard is that if Shabbat leaves, I'm protecting Shabbat because I'm not really protecting Shabbat. I'm protecting me because I live through Shabbat. And if I live through Shabbat, I'm protecting what I live through. For me, not for it. The Shabbat can handle its own, but I can't handle myself without the Shabbat. So when a person's securing leadership in different areas, the security is not for the leader, it's for the people that's doing the security, because if the leader go, then what's going to happen to us if the leader go? So I'm not protecting the leader, I'm protecting our interests in leadership.
Another question. I got a lot of questions today. What is your opinion on spirituality? What do you think? No, before that, is it a sin? I had this question before. Is it a sin to be jovial or to have a good laugh on the Shabbat? Is that contrary to how you're supposed to feel on the Shabbat, or have a good laugh with your friend on the Shabbat?
Okay. Now, I know sometimes, in Ecclesiastes, laughter, what is it? But, and the book of Kohelet, where it's about Heveline, vanity, vanity, all this vanity. All right. So it talks about, and I did the talk on Ecclesiastics. And when I did the talk on Ecclesiastics, it talks about enjoying the moment, and he mentions the word joy, simcha, more so, I think 8 times, where on all, within the combination of the 5 books, it's only mentioned 7 times. And the most, saddest part of the book of Ecclesiastics. Now, it depends on what you enjoy and laughing about on Shabbat. Spirituality, when people talk about, I want to be more spiritual, the words I'm speaking now, you can't see them. All you do is hear them. So then the next question would be, what is a word? A word is a vocalization of a thought.
There you go.
That's what a word is.
Right.
A vocalization of a thought. And if it's a vocalization of a thought, then what is spirituality? Something you can't really see. You just try to manifest the effects of it. But you can't really see spirituality. What you do is manifest the effects of how you feel at the moment. So if you're giving emotions, anger, that's spirituality. Happiness, that's spirituality. Sadness, that's spirituality.
Right.
So you got all these emotions. So when a person say, I want to be more spiritual, then they must be a robot.
Yeah.
Because if you got feelings, then you're spiritual. Now, what level of spirituality and which area of spirituality is a different story.
Got you.
But spirituality exists once you got emotions.
Got you. And that could mean any of the emotions, sadness,
Right,
joyfulness.
exactly.
It could mean any of those things. Right. Very interesting. Yes, that went right into the other question that I had. Okay, I think I've exhausted all my questions for you. Getting the wisdom. It says.
I hope it was worth. I hope I was helpful to some people in some areas there. And if not, just any mistakes been my own, in my dissertation, let's leave a comment, and I'll try to do better if I'm able.
It says, and all right, people, a lot of you have questions during the live stream because I live stream it, right? But when the live stream is over, leave the comments underneath. Don't leave the comments on your questions in the chat. Leave the questions in the comments after the video is uploaded. Copy your questions that you have and then wait till the video is uploaded maybe the next morning. And then leave the questions in the comments. That's what Nasik, those are the questions that Nasik actually gets to see. And he will answer them during the next week. And he will address each and every one of you individually as you ask your questions, all right? So feel free to ask questions, but leave it in the comment, not in the live chat, in the comment after the video is uploaded. Just leave the questions down there, and he goes back and he reviews and he sees, he asks, he checks to see who has questions, and then that's how he answers the questions the next upcoming week. So thank you all once again for tuning in. I know today we went a bit longer, but we have nothing to do. It's a bunch of hours left of darkness. And anyway, this is what most of y'all do at this moment. And you get ready for Shabbat Night Talk. Don't forget at the Uzi Alewi channel, go right there right after this and go to the Uzi Alewi channel and enjoy the Shabbat Night Talk. I believe we're going to be doing a VOZ, a throwback album review, the Voices of Zion throwback album review, and I'm going to try to get our sister Alina to join us so we could go over the history of that album that was dedicated to the creator of the universe, Yehudah. Once again, we'd like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Shalom, shalom, and may
Eternal thanks, praise, honor, and glory be given to Adonai Zevot, our God and God of our ancient forefathers. Blessed in the name of the Eternal, for his enduring mercy, his grace, his compassion, his goodness, which is the sustenance of all of our lives. I'd like to bid you all that under the sound of my voice, Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem.
Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem.
You may be seated. It is with great humility that I stand before the Creator of all that there is this day, blessing his name for my life, for the life of all of you who are present under the sound of my voice, giving due honor and respect to the teacher and leader of this place, even Nasik ben Yisaskar, to the organized body of chiefmen and princemen, Morim. I'd like to also give due honor and respect to my rabbi, Rabbi Yeshurun ben Levi of Beit Shalom Hebrew congregation, of which I am a member of. And I pray that the Most High God might continue to even bless and keep my principal teacher, the man whom the Most High God has used to direct me in the path of truth and to even be able to show me his ways, even Nasi Zopor ben Zavulun and Chief Naphtali ben Naphtali of blessed memory. I pray that the Most High God might bless the words that I speak before you this day, and that the message that I intend to convey will be done so with clarity and in a way that will inspire and instruct. We all know that we are living in extremely interesting times. These are unprecedented times. These are times that we read about through the prophets, yet and still they are very, very unfamiliar to us as we are experiencing them in our day-to-day life. So in this week's parasha, we receive a lot of hope. But we receive hope that is given to us in the form of reunification, of reform. And we also see it in a way in which the hand of the Most High God is not just limited to the nation of Yisrael. It's not just limited to our personal lives, but the Creator's hand pervades all experiences throughout the course of time, and that everything global, everything nationalistic, everything personal is all weaved into one great big now. Now that might be something that is very, very difficult to understand at the offset. But when we look at this week's parasha, we see that what preceded where we are at this particular point in time and Miquetz. What was it that led to the reunification? What was it that led to the redemption? What was it that led to the reform of the brothers' character and their behavior, and it promoted their spiritual maturity? It came from a very, very unsuspected place. It all originated with a very, very complicated and seemingly nonsensical dream that Pharaoh had. Right. And in this dream, Pharaoh was greatly confounded and confused, because here it is now, he sees these cows, strong, healthy, are being devoured by those that are scrawny and malnutritious. And then he begins to see these stalks, strong, good, fervent, and they too were consumed by that which appeared to be withering and weak. And there are many things that perplexed Pharaoh's mind when he saw this. The very first thing is, how is it that these things can consume? How can the inferior consume the superior, and yet and still there is absolutely no indication of growth or change as a result of it? The second thing that perplexed his mind was, how is it that these two things can coexist at the same time? Because he said that they stood along the banks with each other. And And when we later on found out through Joseph, is that these calves, these cows, and this corn all represented various times. 7 years of good and plenty, 7 years of destitution and famine. So how is it possible that these things can coexist? Total opposites. Joseph's words to Pharaoh was deceptively simple. He told him, the dream is one. The dream is one. And this one that we're reading about, these seemingly contradicting occasions, these seemingly contradicting dreams and visions actually led to a whole series of other events that would not have seemed possible. So even though the parasha was named Miquetz, which means the end, yet the end was full of so many beginnings. It was the end of Joseph's imprisonment.
Talk about it.
It was the end of Joseph's enslavement. It was the end of his shame and his humiliation. But it was the birth of the opportunity for reconciliation. It gave him the opportunity to once again join his family. So when we look at life, we see that just like Joseph with Miquetz, beginnings are ends and endings are beginnings. They are all a part of one great big now. It's all one.
That's right.
We need to get that understanding, because as we live in these unprecedented times, these very, very unpredictable times, these very, very frightening times, we can often get a very, very dismal outlook on what our situation is.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you, through this week's parasha, we see that even though it may not appear to be, Egypt is the pathway to the promised land.
Yep.
Captivity is the doorway to freedom.
Yep.
Discord is the path to unity. The idea is we have to learn how to be able to navigate and to recognize these dual realities that we are living within, without becoming overwhelmed and perplexed by them the same way Pharaoh was.
Right. Don't get confused.
Because we embrace that. Week after week, we study the Torah. Week after week, we open up our eyes to a world and to an existence that was shaped and formed and created by the Almighty Himself, and yet we have to juxtapose it or compare it to the existence we see today. We are trying to live out an Eastern culture
Talk about it.
in a Western society.
That's right.
Say that.
We are trying to make sense of the duality that we see that exists within the laws and the rules and the statutes that governs other people and how they are enforced upon us. We're not unfamiliar with dual reality. We live them every day. So our charge is to be able to recognize that every position that we are in, despite however it is that it might appear, is all moving to one supreme, unrelenting goal. And that is the will of the Almighty. Nothing is outside of that.
Right.
We do not get to stand at the line and cause scrimmages and audibles that we think the Almighty don't know about. Right? Like what we did, he didn't factor that in. He already knew it. So we are living a period of time where we have to recognize the opportunity that exists in every human act. And that all of our lives are blended together. And you know what? When we recognize that there is a symmetry to our existence, when there is a symmetry to all of the events that transpire in the world, then we, much like Pharaoh, will be given, as Joseph said, an answer of peace. As long as we keep thinking that things are separated and things are going outside of the will of God, and we're confusing the Creator with our actions and our deeds, we are missing the boat. God is the orchestrator of time and circumstance. And he is the one that specifically and intentionally determines every circumstance and condition that will be in your life, in my life, in the life of the nation, and what we're going to learn about in this week's parasha, even global events, right, for the sole purpose of bringing about his one plan.
That's right. Teach that.
It's never changed. It's never changed. And we're going to see that as Joseph told Pharaoh, forget about the appearance. Don't focus on the contradictions. See the oneness in it all.
Oh, got you.
See the oneness in it all. If we did that, if we recognize that our slavery and our captivity and the condition that we in is only a chapter in our extensive history, one day we will change the page. But recognize you can have no end without a beginning. And they all rotate. You see what happened? What confused Pharaoh was, how do you have years of good and now you're having years of bad? But now these same years of bad all of a sudden give me a dream with years of good. Huh? It's all one.
Right.
It's all one. Let's open up this week's parasha. Hallelujah.
Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Sleep out. That's not right.
Chapter
That's not right.
44, verse 18.
Yeah, I was going to let that go too. Hallelujah. Then Yehudah came near unto him and said, O my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in the ears of my Lord, and let not thy anger burn against thy servant, for thou art even as Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have ye a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one. And his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him.
So now we see that Yehudah steps up. Yeah. And there might be many reasons and motives that we can possibly come with in saying why it is that he took this position at this particular point in time. Was it because he had this voice of persuasion amongst his brothers? Was it because he gave his word to his father? The thing is this, what I believe moved him in this particular moment in time of advocacy for his brother despite the potential loss was he recognized it was his obligation.
Yep.
Not emotion.
Nope.
All the time. Our emotions sometimes can get us doing the right thing, and then sometimes it cannot get us doing the right thing. When we start to look at it from the perspective of we are obligated by the Almighty to make sure that we do not stand idly by and watch the demise of our own. How we bring this together in terms of one is recognizing that all of our lives are inextricably combined.
Okay.
My fate is dependent upon yours. And yours is influenced upon mine. And that might be one of the greatest challenges that we have faced, because as a result of our diverse experiences in the land of this captivity, we have developed a sense of apathy that is very, very destructive. We don't feel moved. We don't feel compelled by the suffering of other individuals because we oftentimes are either more concerned with ourselves or what we consider our potential loss or risk to be.
All right. See that.
Recognize that the minute that happens, it is the complete breakup of the nation. In 1982, they had. Can you use the word, please?
It's coming.
In 1982, they had these sociologists by the name of James Williams, and the other one, I believe his name was something Kelly. And they developed that theory that is called broken windows. Right. And what broken windows is they was trying to illustrate how social behavior and a sense of apathy that can develop within a community or amongst people is a matter of conditioning, right? Not one example or not one event. So they would take a car and they would put a car in the neighborhood and they would smash one window. Mm-hmm. And in the smashing of that window, what they would do is they would sit and they would wait to see how long it would take for people to call it in. And guess what happened after week one? The one window that was smashed, now the car gets broken into and the radio gets taken. By the following week, now the wheels are taken. By the third week or 2.5 weeks, you got the kids in the neighborhood jumping on the car, playing on the car, and soon you know it, it's set to fire in flames.
No calling.
And no calling.
Nah, we ain't going.
No calling.
No calling.
But what they didn't recognize, or what we don't recognize, is what they were showing with this social experiment is that the more that people see destruction and they are able to walk past it and be non-responsive, that those seemingly little inconsiderations turn to major crimes. So they focused a lot on the rapes and the murders. And they said, well, maybe we won't have so much rapes and murders if we could somehow raise people's level of social accountability and social awareness. Because once we start seeing these little things that happen, it makes it so much easier for us to disregard the major atrocities. And a lot of times we live with a false idea. And the false idea is that if I see something major happening, I will intervene. But you've lived your everyday life disregarding. It don't work like that.
Not consistent.
It don't work like that. Exactly, it's not consistent. And before you know, you're trying to figure out how is it that I got to this point where I could see my brother being violently taken away, where I could see my people being oppressed, where I could see injustice and not open up my mouth, it's because we have conditioned ourselves to be able to walk past our environments every single day, seeing crime, seeing hurt, seeing pain, and taking absolutely no stock or interest in it. The Almighty Himself tells us about this pattern and how we need to be mindful of it. When we read in the book of Obadiah, the Most High said, in the Most High's indictment against Edom, you know what he said? The Creator said, you should not have stood on the other side as people came into your brother's land.
That's what he said.
And then he said, you should not have stayed on the other side when they came and they took his possession.
That's right.
Then he said, you should not have laughed in the day of his calamity. Right. Then he said, you should not have cut off the way for those that sought to escape.
That's right.
Do you see the progression?
Right.
They went from staying on the side to now becoming those that aided in it. So what is the Most High telling us through this? That in time, silent observers become perpetrators.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Silent observers become perpetrators. It's not as simple as just being able to sit by and to watch it and to not say anything. Because just like with that social experiment, that car is a representation. People look and say, oh, it's a car.
No.
The car is a representation of the attitudes and the behaviors of the people in the community.
Right.
And people begin to make judgments based on the car. If you have a car that you just worked for and you enjoy it and you value it, and now you about to park, you could have been driving around 10 minutes trying to find a parking spot. And there's one huge one, but there's 4 broken down cars that's sitting right on that same block with the windows busted out and the tires. What you say? I ain't parking my car here.
We consider.
I ain't parking my car here. Right? Everything is going to be based off of what you're seeing, because that is going to tell you something about what? The car or the people in the neighborhood?
People in the neighborhood.
We got to get involved.
21. And thou said unto thy servant, bring him down unto me, that I may set my eyes upon him. And we said unto my Lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. And you said unto thy servant, except your youngest brother come down with you, you shall see my face no more. And it came to pass, when we came up to thy servant my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, go again, buy us a little food. And we said, we cannot. If our youngest brother be not with us, then we will not go down, for we may not see the man's face except our youngest brother be with us.
So as I said, all things are tied together into one. Every experience it is that you have in your life is to give you the opportunity for growth and success for something you are to accomplish at another time. There is no issue of happenstance in the world. And now Yehudah is recognizing that in this particular moment, he was fit for it. Why? Because he was able to speak to the situation in a way unlike anyone else, because it was his story too. He lost sons. He lost 2. And he knew that after he lost 2, what his intention was and how violently he tried to hold on to Shayla, the last one.
Message, right?
So he was able to speak to it because, why? There is a universality that is amongst human beings, and it's not based on our situation. It's being able to connect with each other emotionally. Empathy. I don't need to go through the exact same experience as you in order to feel for you. We got to work on becoming more sensitive to each other. To each other. Because at this particular time, Yehudah is not speaking from here. He's speaking from here. And he found a way to make sure that the trauma in his life, the pain that he endured in his life would be for a greater good. Now, situations can be the impetus for growth, but we don't just grow automatically. Growth is deliberate. And you have to make a conscious choice, a conscious decision, that no matter what happens to you in your life, that you process it in such a way where you recognize that it can be of benefit, not only to you later, but to someone else.
Right.
This is how we strengthen ourselves through our collective experience as a nation. When we see that our pain and our suffering allows me to connect with your pain and your suffering. You ever notice that the very first mention of us as a nation was in captivity? God said, "No, for surety, your people." Right? People gonna go down into a land that isn't theirs, and they're gonna be there.
Right.
Why is that so important? Is it just that we needed to know and to understand that the Creator was the source of our strength? He already told us, y'all were the last. We're the last of the ancient nations.
Right.
But perhaps there was a greater cause. Because ultimately God said, you, Israel, will be the social advocates of the world. And I'm going to ensure that you are passionate about speaking out against injustice and racism and prejudice and oppression. Why? Because you lived it.
Nice.
Because you lived it. So I'm going to manufacture all of these circumstances in the life of you as a nation to cultivate a certain level of sensitivity to you. Why you think it is that how many commandments that we have that have to deal with social advocacy, social justice, consideration is God says you shall do this because you were slaves in Egypt.
Sure.
That's why you should do this. Who's been more hurt than us?
Nobody.
Why are we so silent? Why are we so silent? You know the lives of the prophets? Before they were able to give their message, God subjected them in some way or another to exactly what they were supposed to tell us.
Yep.
And people going to walk around, they're going to be naked. Now, right now, you can start. Okay?
Right.
You can start right now.
Right now.
You can start right now. Right?
That's right.
Start right now. So that when you see it, something in your heart should stir. But here's the thing with experience. It could either sensitize us or it can harden us. And if there's one thing that I think that came of good out of this pandemic, amidst the death and suffering and the crumbling economy and the uncertainty about work and livelihood, the one thing that I believe that it is teaching all of us is to be more socially responsible.
I agree.
It's teaching us that your life and your decisions aren't just about you.
Mm-hmm.
That what you do impacts other people.
Condition.
And we look at these things and we try to say, oh, well, that's this and that's America, no. No. Even when we look within the Torah, in Leviticus 13, you have what I like to call God's infectious control plan. And it has to deal with leprosy.
Okay.
And once the person is diagnosed leprous by the priest, there are 3 things that he must do that promote social responsibility and awareness. The very first thing the Almighty says is he must cover his mouth.
Right.
And then he says he must proclaim his uncleanness.
Right.
And then he must separate himself from the community.
Come on.
It's new?
No.
It's not new.
No.
It's godly.
God said, be responsible for each other.
Right.
Don't tell me my body, my right. No. No. Not when your body can infect mine.
Amen.
You don't have the right to do that. What did the law of the Almighty says? You see your brother's ox go astray, bring it to him. You see your brother's ox fall in a ditch, dig it back. If you start a fire and it goes and destroys your brother's property, you must pay restitution.
Right.
All social responsibility.
Verse 27. Thy servant my father said unto me, you know my wife bore me 2 sons. One went out from me and I said, surely he's torn in pieces, and I haven't seen him since. And if you take this one also from me and harm before him, you will bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad is not with us, seeing that his life is bound up with the life of the lad, it will come to pass that when he see that the lad is not with us, that he will die. And thy servants would have had brought down the gray hairs of thy servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For thy servant became surety for the lad unto my father, saying, if I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame to my father forever.
So I'm sure at this particular point in time, Joseph is probably like trying to keep it together.
Yeah.
Trying his best to keep it together. You know why? I don't think so much about the words of Yehudah, which was quite powerful. But Yehudah's words gave him a doorway into the rippling effects of his action that he may not have considered.
Talk about it.
Because when we are at friction, when we're at odds with each other, when we put it within ourselves that we're going to exact revenge, oftentimes we don't consider the collateral damage of the decision.
Message.
The other people that are affected. So now he knew, because there was a point in time where a lot of this suffering could have stopped early.
Say what?
A lot of this suffering, there was suffering that was there, and there was some of it that was perpetrated regardless of the motives. I don't want to get into what his motives were. He wanted to test his brothers. He wanted to see whether they changed. I don't know what the motives were. But what was clear was a lot of it could have ended earlier.
Amen.
And now he's sitting there and he's hearing and getting a perspective that he didn't have, because what we know in a time of friction is our own pain.
Right.
We're familiar with our pain.
Right.
We're familiar with how you made us feel, how you made me feel. But sometimes you got to give yourself the opportunity for the other person to tell you their narrative.
Yep.
That's a fact.
And we don't like that. Because if you're my nemesis, if you're my enemy, I know I'm violating God's law. So I need somehow to feel justified in doing it. So in doing that, I have to make sure that I make you even greater criminal than whatever act it was that you did.
Wow.
Because I need to feel justified in doing it.
Right.
But what happens when we allow people to tell their story? Because when we make people criminals, you know what we do? We fill in the missing pieces.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because we don't have the information.
Oh, yeah.
So you did this because of that. And you never did this. You never liked me. And you da. But a lot of times, if you sit there and you just allow people to tell you their narrative, their story, we might walk away with something completely different. We might realize that, hey, it wasn't just me hurting. Joseph knew his hurt. I've been incarcerated these, 12, 13 years. I done been falsely accused. He knew his hurt. You know what he didn't know? His father's hurt. You know what he didn't know? His brother's hurt. Because as far as he's concerned, you guys, you know, y'all didn't like me anyway. Y'all did this. Y'all did this. Y'all don't care.
Right.
Y'all probably moved up to number one in I was loved and position.
Hate.
Right? It's easy how they could look at it. But now when you sit there and you're talking, you're like, oh, wow. If we're going to bring our nation back together,
Right.
we got to recognize that we've been given false narratives about each other. And we've created false narratives about each other. And we go along interacting with each other with these false and contrived sense of reality instead of saying, hey, let me speak to Chief Naphtali myself. It's why we're so easily divided. Because I was dropped off here, you was dropped off there,
Yeah.
but they didn't just drop us off. Because they knew that we all came on the same boat. So while you're there, they had to reframe your history. They had to give you a whole different narrative. So now, when we interact with each other, we don't see the commonality. All we see is the difference.
Now therefore let thy servant, I pray thee, abide instead of the lad a bondman unto my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad be not with me, lest I look upon the evil that shall come upon my father? Chapter 45. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all that stood before him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me.
Now, you know, I'm not sure the brother's name. It was just up here in Haftarah. You know, but he was saying, El Quana, man. And he was saying how, you know, we a lot of times don't want it to be that circumstances, dire circumstances and situations be the thing that causes us to have to work together, but it's the only thing that will work. Because we have developed so many false personas, so many defense mechanisms that we have that keep us from genuine interaction with each other. The same way that Joseph was doing. So he had this false persona, said he made himself strange to his brothers, not only in his appearance, but in his behavior as well.
That's right.
It wasn't just his appearance. It was his behavior. And now he's sitting there and he's at this point where he wants to break it down, but in order to really reveal who he is, he got to let go.
Say what?
And you know what else? He got to be vulnerable. Who wants to be vulnerable? Nobody wants to be vulnerable, right? We keep these walls up constantly, all the time, and not recognizing that all of this false bravado, these false personalities and stuff that we have, the only thing it does is it keeps us from being able to join together. That's it. Your defense mechanism is just that. It's a defense. And a defense is a wall. And the wall is what? Something that blocks things from coming together.
All right.
And we all have to be able to make that difficult choice, that difficult decision to be vulnerable and to be real. That's what I mean by vulnerability. I mean to be real. Because it is the only way to resolve the identity crisis that we all deal with. Now, I know we might look at Joseph and it might seem strange that I would say that he was dealing with an identity crisis. He dealt with an identity crisis the same way that everyone else who are of a different nationality and are being thrust into a whole nother society and culture and having to figure out a way to navigate between it. And you know where the evidence of that lies? The evidence of that lies in the naming of his children.
Right.
Right?
Talk about it.
Ephraim and Manasseh. Right? One of them, he acknowledged himself as being a stranger, forgetting his father's house. The other one, he's a stranger. So it's like I'm not home, I'm not with my people, but at the same time, I recognize that even though I've acclimated and I'm here, I'm not quite this either.
Right.
And it might explain, it just might explain, why is it that at least after 9 years, 7 years of good, they say that the brothers came, I believe, in the second year of the famine. Right? So we're talking about 9 years of his freedom, and he never reached out to home.
Message. Fool.
He didn't send nobody to go home,
Nobody.
and he could have.
Easy.
He had the resources to do so at that. He's viceroy. Right? But there was a crisis of identity. And when we don't know exactly where we fit, where we belong, when we feel rejected and dejected by our own, then we have no other choice but to try to create a life for us that is outside of where we should be. So a lot of times when we look at our brothers and our sisters and we're wondering like why, they seem to be straddling the fence, we've all been affected by this thing. And it all has led to us putting up, much like Joseph, these barriers, these walls, and we have to find a way to tear them down. And the thing that is going to make that happen is the struggle. That is the oneness in the dream. It's going to be the struggle when people get to the point where they just say, you know what? This ain't benefiting me to keep acting this way, to keep holding this grudge, to keep being so hard, to keep being so unforgiving. Is that who we are? Or is that what our conditions have made us to be? The Creator told us in Deuteronomy 28, after we read these curses, he says, and the eye of your brother shall be evil towards his brother. Sore. And the woman, right? The one that comes from in between her feet. God let us know. It's not work. It's what our conditions have caused us to be. Let's take an earnest look at how we've been processing our experiences and allowing them to impact who we have become. And when we see that it's inconsistent with what God commands, shred it. Drop the image. Drop the bravado. Don't try to be Torah compliant and abiding, on Shabbat and something else during the course of the week. We all got these things that we got to shred amongst ourselves. And it takes courage to look at it. Because here was the thing. He knew who they were.
Yep.
They didn't know who he were. So who was the problem?
Right. Talk about it. Verse 2. And he wept aloud. Slika. There stood no man with him while he made himself known unto his brethren. Mm-hmm. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians heard, and the house of Pharaoh heard. Mm-hmm. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Is my father yet alive? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were affrighted at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. And now, be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me here. For El Shaddai sent me here before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine have been in the land, and there are yet 5 years in which there shall be neither plowing nor harvest. And El Shaddai sent me before you to give you a remnant on earth, and to save you alive for a great deliverance.
So, we don't have the option of changing what happens to us. It happens. The past. Can't change it. The power that God did invest in all of us was to be able to redefine our experience. And to be able to reassign a different meaning to our suffering or our trials. That is incredibly powerful. Because what Joseph is doing is he's recognizing that I'm not focusing anymore on the small, intricate pieces, and now I am losing the vision of the whole. He saw how God was maneuvering this whole thing. So even though it seemed as if people are doing things that are painful or hurtful or wrong, excuse me, there is an intended good in it. If you can get it. If you could get it, if you can find it, there's an intended good. And his good was God sent him ahead. His personal experience was actually the roadmap of deliverance for the nation. Mm-hmm. So when we look at our differences and we start saying to ourselves, like, these people is over here and they believe this and they were over here and they believe that, or they do this, they do that. The thing is this: our captivities were the same, yet different in a lot of ways. And there are certain advantages that we may have had because we were in a certain place. And there are certain deficits that we may have had because we were in a certain place. And trying to survive, we learn exactly how we can harness and benefit, certain things. If we are able to pull all of that together, we will recognize that God sent all of us ahead to be able to make a way for the whole.
Okay.
Don't look at your brother that comes back and it's just like, oh, well, he looks different than you, or, he has a different tradition than you, or he worships differently than you. And I'm talking about in terms of how, not who. Okay. How, not who. Right? Right? And we look at those things and we don't see the fact that it's your brother. He's your brother. How far along we would be. There are communities now that they may have suffered certain deficits. They may not have the resources we have. There's communities out here that, cry for prayer books.
Okay.
Cry for Bibles, Torahs, may have one little book in a whole community that they all gather around with. There are literally communities like that. I know it's hard for us to fathom because God's word is so accessible to us, right? But even in that, even in their destitution and lack of certain things, and not having these social programs or things, they may have learned how to live off of the land. They may have learned how to be more industrious. They may have learned how to, to farm and to take care of cattle. Right. And guess what? That's not separate from us. That is God sending them ahead of us. Right. Because we were going to get eventually to the place where what? We would need land. And who's going to take care of it? A bunch of city folk that don't know nothing about it? Who's supposed to take care of it?
Right.
I can't plant anything. Right? So, when we start putting all of these pieces together, right, we will realize that we are not lacking anything as a nation. God has given us everything that we need to succeed. What happens is we have failed to be able to bring everything under one. If we can do that, then we can recognize that we can exchange information with those brothers that live off of the land. We should be reaching out to them. We have these options that, these things that we deal with as a community that we say are just reoccurring problems, with education and school, and we can't come up and get our own institutions for our children. Okay, let's not reinvent the wheel. What about the communities that have been homeschooling for I don't know how long now? Right. Why? Because there's no other options for them.
Right.
Right.
Condition will bring you together.
Conditions bring us together.
That's right.
We got to reach out to them. Stop. We can't be living as islands. We got to start looking at our survival is based on being able to network. And there are things that people learn and they get from us, city folk up here, right? And we're often appreciated for our depth of knowledge in terms of Torah, right?
It's true.
But boy, do we fail in execution.
Don't stop it.
And in these communities that we say, struggling, don't have it all right, and we nick and pick about, well, they ain't doing this law right, and this is supposed to be interpreted this way.
Right.
But they have communities. They have institutions. They have businesses. And whatever it is that they know, they're applying it. Right? Because knowledge is only good when it's used. It's the only value that it has. Knowing the Torah will not change your life at all. I promise you. I promise you. Doing the Torah will change your life substantially.
Verse 8. So it was not you that sent me hither, but El Shaddai, and he that had made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord to his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hasten ye, go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, El Shaddai had made me lord over all of Egypt. Come down to me, tarry not. Thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen. Thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children and thy children's children, and thy flocks and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there I will sustain you, for there are yet 5 years of the famine left, lest thou come to poverty, thou and thy household, and all that thou hast.
So he had the inside. God gave him. He said, this is what is going to happen. And our people, our forefather Yaakov, at this particular time, and his family was in a very, very desperate situation.
Yes, sir.
Had not the Creator already had this divine plan and worked out we would have came into Egypt the same way everybody else did.
Low.
Everybody else came into Egypt selling everything.
That's right.
Selling everything.
Everything.
But the future belongs to the person that prepares today.
Man.
All right.
So because he knew it was coming, and he said that we know it's going to be another 5 years, he was able to prepare for it. We read these things year after year.
Yes, sir.
Still struggling.
We read these things year after year. We have dynamic teachers who can come and break down and reveal to us the tragic days that lies ahead. What are we doing?
Right.
Every day there's messages, warnings
Yes, it is. Teach that.
of food insecurity.
Right.
Where's the storehouse?
I got money.
Say that.
Where?
Got to prepare.
It's as if we're waiting for God to do something that he never said he would do.
Right. Right. Fantasy.
That's the dangerous thing.
Come on.
Because he said, with Abraham, I will not conceal my plan from Abraham because what?
Is he gonna command?
He will command, which means what? He will plan, he will have things in order to execute my will.
Right.
Okay.
That's what that means. So when we look and we see every time we open up the prophets and we read terrible times are coming for Israel. Terrible times. How prepared are we? How prepared are we? And if we perish in the midst of it, who can we blame? Economics
Talk about it.
has to become a focal point.
Exactly. A priority.
Do not try to live in a world where you're so heavily minded that you're no earthly good. Economics and economic stability is essential to every nation. And even when you look at our forefathers
Talk about it.
and how they were able to move forward, it was not in the absence of economics.
Right. They have money.
God reversed Yaakov's condition and subjugation under Laban by doing what? He told him, he said, look at this. You see these flowers? Now I'm going to show you something. He told him how to master his craft.
Yeah.
He told him how to make good investments. He told him how to take a little something and multiply it into more.
Take that for that.
That's economics. And Yaakov was successful, and he was able to plan by himself because the very first thing he did was separate his from Laban's.
That's right.
That's a powerful lesson right there, then and there.
So,
As long as our stuff is just tied up with each other, and I'm talking about all of our resources, all of our income, all of our strength is just being plunged into the economy of someone else, they become richer and we become poorer. There must be a line of division.
Don't start now.
In that line of division, he said, I'm not asking you for nothing, Laban. The only thing I want from you is to level the playing field, right? And give me a fresh start.
right.
And I'll make my own way.
That's
and
right.
you know what? That is the way of our people. This idea that we've developed, you know, that affirmative action or the protesting and the march was all about handouts. Our people never was about handouts. Read the history and don't accept the narrative that was given. The only thing that they said is, I want you to level the playing field.
They ain't
You
ready.
level the playing field, we'll make our own way.
They ain't ready.
Right. Play fair.
That's it. I want you to take away these rules that stop me from getting the same shot that everybody else is getting.
That's right. That's all.
And I will make my own way.
Quick fast.
That's exactly what Yaakov done. That's exactly what Yosef done. But what good is it if we can teach it and do it for others and can't produce it for ourselves?
Make others rich.
That's right.
Yaakov made Laban rich.
Filthy.
Rich. To the point where he said, nah, man, you can't go. I'm
Right.
sorry, Jack. I'm sorry. Life is going to be real different without you around these towns. Right? Made him rich.
Filthy.
Yosef is not only helping Egypt to survive,
Say it.
he's making them even more wealthier than they were.
That's right.
This was not just a plan that he gave them for survival.
No, sir.
So we can do it for others. Have to do it for ourselves. Start with separation.
Yep.
Start with separation. I don't care what it is. Make sure your income and your finance and what you have for yourself is separate from what goes out. And make sure that you have something, doesn't matter how much it is, to always invest in, so that you can turn what little you have into something greater. It's how all of our forefathers did it, people. Coins didn't just fall out of the sky. Manna did. Coins did not just fall out of the sky.
No coins?
Didn't happen.
No shekels.
No shekels.
No shekels.
Verse 12. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. And you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and all that he hath seen. And he shall hasten and bring down my father hither. And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brethren, and he wept upon them. And after that his brethren talked with him. And the report thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come. And it pleased Pharaoh well and his servants. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Say unto thy brethren, This do ye, laden your beast and go, and get you to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your household, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. Now thou art commanded, This do ye. Take you wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come.
So he's encouraging them now. He says, we want to stir up enough to bring my father down here. He knew this wasn't going to be an easy task. He knew that, right? Because, one, Yaakov is elder in age, right? He have already lived his life going from place to place, and that's why he had Parasha Wayechi, and he settled, he dwelt. He wanted to get into a place of tranquility and live out the remainder of his life in peace. But in order to drive him into this motion, into movement, he says, listen, you bring my father, but you can't just go to him with this story.
Right.
Right? Because they already knew. It's like, in Yaakov's perspective, every single time y'all go to Egypt, y'all keep coming back telling somebody else have to go back down. Right? This started to look like a plan of detraction. Every single time y'all go up, y'all say, we could go back, but somebody else got to go back down.
Right,
so now we asking for you. So in order to get him to move, in order to get him to invest in that, you know what he had to do? He had to have some evidence
You say what?
to his success.
Verifying.
Had to be verifiable.
Uh-oh.
You're not going to get people to move because of a good sermon.
No, sir.
They did it. They did it already. They heard them all already. So a lot of times when we say or we think that economic wealth and prosperity is not important, don't recognize how it prevents people from hearing us.
Right. Say it again.
What did Melech Shalomo say? A poor man's wisdom is spurned. Didn't say that he's not wise.
Sure
They
did.
called him a poor man. Well, why would I listen to anything it is that you have to say if it looks like everything that your whole life is in disarray? And you're going to counsel me about how to put it together, put mine together. It doesn't work like that. Our people, in order to get them to buy into this oneness, exactly.
Say what?
Exactly. We have to do our part. We have to make sure that there is something that encourages people, because what you're doing, and I need us to understand this. A lot of times we think that, this is just about truth. People should hear truth. And they should accept truth.
Yeah.
But people have developed and built their lives on certain foundations. And to get people to move out of that is not just always showing them something in the book. That's reality. I remember when I was in Albany, and we had a little place and we was teaching, and there was this lady who came out, and she was coming to Torah class on Wednesdays. She came for a while. She would come out occasionally on Shabbat, but she would come out pretty much for Torah class. And one day she called me to the side when we finished, and she was like, "No, brother." She was like, "Can I speak to you?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." She was like, "I appreciate everything that you said." And she said, "And I know for a fact that I'm a Hebrew, that I'm an Israelite. And I know this is right. But I have this problem."
Okay.
My problem is, I'm a single mother. I have 2 children. I have a job, but I don't have the money to pay for babysitting. The church that I'm going to, they've been offering me babysitting. And that's how I've been getting by. In order for me to break free of that and not go to the church, I know I'm going to sacrifice that babysitting. I don't want to do it. I know it's false. I don't want to continue to live in falsehood. I don't want to teach my children something that is not true. Please, can you help me?
That's our fault.
And I had to sit there and say, we had nothing. We had nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing to the extent where we could tell this lady, we were satisfied the price of, your daycare. Or even to the extent of, maybe a couple of the sisters can get together, and they can watch them in the camp, for a couple of hours while you go to work. We had nothing.
We had nothing. It's a shame.
And guess what? I never saw her again. I never saw her again. These are the things that we have to consider. We want to get people to move and to change their life. We got to be able to show them it's a better life.
That's right.
Have some.
You got to have something. That poor righteous teacher idea
It's not us.
is done. Nobody's buying it. Nobody's buying it anymore. People are hurting. And if you're sitting there grappling with how you're going to make it to the next day, or make it through today, philosophical debates about what's in the book is not going to take priority. That's the reality.
All right.
20. Also regard not your things, for the good things of all the land of Egypt are yours. Verse 21. And the sons of Yisrael did so, and Yosef gave them wagons according to the commandment of Paro, and gave them provision for the way. To all of them he gave each man a change of raiment, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 changes of raiment. And to his father he sent in like manner 10 asses laden with the good things of Egypt, and 10 she asses laden with corn and bread and victuals for his father by the way. So he sent his brethren away, and they departed. And he said unto them, see that ye fall not out by the way. And they went up out of Egypt, and came into the land of Canaan unto Yaakov their father. And they told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And his heart fainted, for he believed them not. And they told him all the words of Joseph, which he said unto them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph sent to carry him away.
So he wasn't moved by just what they said.
At all.
Okay, all right, just checking.
And when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the Ruach of Yaakov their father revived. And Israel said, it is enough. My son is yet alive. I will go see him before I die.
Now, you notice the difference there? The whole time before you read Yaakov. But once he heard about Joseph, now it's referring to him as Yisrael.
Hello.
So that means it says good news is health to the bones,
That's what
marrow
it
to the
is.
bones, right? This was something that revived him.
That's right.
And you know what? This is the debt that every last one of us have to our predecessors and our elders.
Yep.
We are obligated to make sure that when they close their eyes or they feel that they're closing days, that they don't look back and feel as if their life was, something of vanity and their efforts was worthless. And what that means is those things that we consider to be small victories. Because if you imagine you're an elder and you lived all this time, even though you have in your heart, because he longed for his son. And even when he tells the story, he's like, well, he was torn by beasts. Well, I ain't seen him since. That didn't even seem to go together. Torn by beasts, But at the same time, it was one of those things of how something happened that he wanted, he longed for, but wasn't really sure if it was going to happen. Or especially in his days and in his time. And what might that mean to someone? When President Obama was doing his first election, right? And my wife and I, we were waiting in this long line, trying to get into school, because if y'all remember during that time, it was hectic. And there was a lot of things seemingly to try to keep us from voting, getting those votes in, right? That was just very, very obvious. So we're sitting around it for a long time, and it was interesting because one of the reoccurring themes the whole time was just like, so many elders that were sitting there, and it was like, I never thought I would see the day where this would happen. And as I listened to them, because I kept hearing this, kind of going throughout the whole crowd. And, the thing that I thought to myself is, I would never be able to understand what this moment really means for them.
Right.
Try as I might, I would never be able to understand. These were people who was like, I remember when we couldn't vote.
Okay.
I remember when we couldn't go to school. I remember when we couldn't get an apartment in the neighborhood or area. And now, I'm looking at this. The dream is one.
Right.
And our responsibility is to make sure that we give our elders some indication that there is progress.
That's right.
We owe it to them.
Okay.
We owe it to them, regardless of however it is that you might feel. Because you know what? When it comes to advocacy and all of these things, We condition ourselves to say, why bother? It's dangerous. We tell ourselves, why vote? This is not our place. God said that you shouldn't have a stranger over you. Yeah, but this ain't your land.
Right.
This ain't your land. What difference would it make? We don't have the option. We don't have the right to withdraw from the fight because we think that our actions or our efforts are worthless. Because it's all part of one big story. And how many marches, how many sit-ins before they abolished Jim Crow? How many? How many protests before they decide to change or amend this rule? Sometimes it was years. And every single day that they went out, knowing nothing may not happen. But you know the beauty of it is, the Maftia El-Qur'an said something very important. He said that if your name would be forgotten, but the mission was accomplished, would you still be happy?
Right. Oh, yeah.
And that's what it's all about. When it's one plan, one thread, you recognize that I am not responsible to finish it.
Right.
But I'm not relieved to be involved in the fight. And every rejection it is that I get is only so that it can possibly make a way for the ones that come after me. Stop being selfish.
Gotcha.
It's a selfish-minded individual who says, I'm only going to get involved because I feel I want the results now. We are only experiencing the results now because of people who have closed their eyes to this world.
Right.
Paying forward.
Right.
But we recognize that it's all one plan. I don't have to finish it.
That's right.
And quite frankly, I don't care. I'm less concerned with whether or not I'm going to get good results out of my actions as opposed to making sure that I respond.
Right.
Because you know what? I can't control it. I can't control the outcome. We read the Maccabees, right? For Hanukkah. What did they say? When they was going to war, it said, listen, give your lives for God. Fight for the covenant of your fathers and let God determine the rest.
Sound good.
All you're responsible for is the effort. But if we put that effort in, how good it is to those who came before us to be able to sit back and to see it. Too many of our elders, it's so sad, it's depressing to speak to them and they give accounts of how we're just going backwards. How can it be that 19, 20, 30, 40 were glory days when we're in 2021 and there's far more opportunity than they ever had?
Right.
Lazy.
How can that be the glory days?
Negligence.
Yep. There's more unity.
We're missing so much opportunity that is before us.
Chapter 46. And Yisrael took his journey with all that he had, and he came to Be'er Sheva and offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Yitzchak. And El Shaddai spoke to Yisrael in the vision of the night and said, Yaakov, Yaakov. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am El Shaddai, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for there I will make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee into Egypt. I will also surely bring thee up again. And Joseph shall put his hands upon thy eyes. And Yaakov rose from Be'er Sheba, and the sons of Israel carried Yaakov their father and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry them. And they took their little ones and their goods which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt. And Yaakov and all his seed with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, and his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his seed brought he with him into Egypt. These are the names of the children of Yisrael that came into Egypt with Yaakov and his sons. Reuben, Yaakov's firstborn. The son of Reuben, Chanok, and Palu, and Chetzron, and Carmi. The son of Shimon, Yemuel, and Yamin, and Ochad, and Yachin, and Zochar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanitish woman. The son of Levi, Gershon, Kohat, Umrari. The sons of Yehuda, and Onan, and Shelach, and Peretz, and Zerach. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Peretz was Chetzron, and Chamul. The sons of Yissaschar, Tola, and Puah, and Eyob, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Seret, Elon, Yachliel. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore unto Yaakov in Padan Aram with his daughter Dinah. And all the people of his sons and daughters were 33. And the sons of Gad were Zipion, and Chagi, and Shuni, and Etzbon, and Eri, and Arodi, and Arieli. And the sons of Asher, Imnah, and Ishwa, and Ishwi, and Beriah, and Serah their sister. And the son of Beriah, Heber, and Machliel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and she bore unto Yaakov 16 people. The sons of Rachel, Yaakov's wife, Yosef Ubenyamin. And unto Yosef in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, who Asnat, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore unto him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela, and Becher, and Ashbel, and Gera, and Naaman, and Ehu, and Rosh, and Mupim, and Hupim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, who were born to Yaakov. All the people were 14. And the sons of Chushim, and the son of Dan, Chushim. And the son of Naphtali, Yachziel, and Guni, and Yezer, and Shilem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave unto Rachel his daughter, and these she bore unto Yaakov. All the people were 7. And all the people belonging to Yaakov that came into Egypt, that came out of his loins, beside Yaakov's sons' wives, all the people were 70. And the sons of Joseph, who were born in Egypt, were 2. And all the people of the house of Yaakov that came into Egypt were 70.
Now, why is this so important? Is because in another week or so, after next week, 2 weeks, we'll open up the book of Shemot. And you know what you're going to see?
Same thing.
Those same names. Which lets you know that it doesn't necessarily mean going down into Egypt, being in Egypt doesn't have to always result into a loss of personal identity.
Message.
They were able to go down into Egypt, and they prospered, and yet they still kept their core. Even amongst the Egyptians, they were still recognized as a separate people. It is possible to be able to exist successfully in those two worlds.
And he sent Yehudah before him unto Joseph to show the way before him unto Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. And Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Yisrael his father to Goshen. And he presented himself unto him and fell on his neck, and he wept a good while. And Yisrael said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, and thou art yet alive. And Joseph said unto his brethren and unto his father, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and say unto him, My brethren and my father's house, who are in the land of Canaan, are come up unto me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of cattle, and they have bought their flocks and their herds, and all that they have. Go.
And it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you, and you shall say, What is your occupation? That ye shall say, Thy servants have been keepers of cattle from our youth, even until now, both we and our fathers, that ye may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians.
So it says that first thing Pharaoh wanted to know, famine and all, if you here, how are you going to be an asset to us? It's not, there's no handouts. There's no handouts. Pharaoh said, if you're going to come here, especially in the midst of a famine, we trying to, food supply, and now you coming in with like 70 souls or more, right? That's a lot of mouths to feed. And then y'all going to have children, it's going to be more mouths. How are y'all going to be an asset unto us? It's a thing that we need to think about. Don't be so clear on what your occupation is outside of the nation and completely lost about what your job function is within the nation, right? And that happens a lot of time. We're clear on what our occupation is outside. You ask somebody, well, what is your contribution to the nation of Israel inward? And a lot of times we haven't figured that out. But it's important that we spend time to identify what is my particular gift, charge, and responsibility within the nation, and give it that same level of consideration that you do when it comes to supporting your livelihood outside, because both of those lives equal just one you.
47. Then Joseph went in and told Pharaoh and said, my father and my brethren, their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. From among his brethren he took 5 men and presented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, what's your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, thy servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers. And they said unto Pharaoh, to sojourn in the land are we come, for there is no pasture for thy servants' flock, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Egypt is before thee, and the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell. And if thou knowest any able men among them, make them rulers over my cattle. And Joseph brought in Yaakov his father, and set him before Pharaoh. And Yaakov blessed Pharaoh.
So all of our actions, all of our lives should make it easier for someone to come behind. You know, the worst thing there could be is to work into a place and everybody know that you're a Hebrew and you're an Israelite, and then, you know, you have another Hebrew or Israelite that decide to work within that same business, and they see a difference in character, difference in behavior, completely different assessment of who we are and what we are supposed to be. Joseph lived his life in such a way where Yaakov was able to come in under royalty, and everybody else was coming in under servitude.
That's right.
Pharaoh said unto Yaakov, how many are the days of the years of thy life? And Yaakov said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojournings are 130. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained unto the days of the years of the lives of my fathers in the days of their sojournings. And Yaakov blessed Pharaoh and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren, and gave them possessions in the land of Egypt, and the best of the land in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh commanded. And Joseph sustained his father and his brethren in all his father's house with bread according to the one of their little ones. And there was no food in all the land of Egypt, for the famine was sore, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house.
Boy, did Pharaoh love Joseph, boy. I'm sure he loved him greatly. Yeah.
And when the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence, for our money fails?
Yeah. So, lastly, I just really want to make this point. Getting land is important. We focus a lot on money. Money is a means to an end. Money will not feed you. Land will sustain you. You see what happened here? Remember, Yaakov had money.
A whole lot.
Had a whole lot of money. What he didn't have was food.
That's right.
He had money. But there comes a point in time like where your money, you know, you'll trade all of the money that you have for a loaf of bread.
That's right.
If you need it.
Right.
If the situation is that dire, you would trade every dime that you have for bread. And security of our nation is going to come with being able to control our food supply. When you can't control your food supply, You leave yourself vulnerable for anybody to be able to exact whatever it is they want with you from your money, because you'll give them anything for that bread when it's bad enough.
$20.
It's how they control. It's how the economy is controlled, right? You know, people who control land and control food, they can cause spikes and drops in the economy very easy. There are farmers that get paid thousands of dollars to burn wheat.
Millions.
Millions. Just to make sure that we need to boost the economy. So we're going to make sure that we can raise the price of bread. How do we do that? By making bread scarce. How do we say that bread is scarce? By making sure that we have a limitation of the wheat. So they pay the farmers, burn this.
Don't sell it, burn it.
So we have to start thinking about how it is that we can control our own food. Food is what they call an elastic clause. An elastic clause means that you can charge whatever the heck it is that you want. Now, people can rail against it, but either you're going to pay for it or you're going to starve.
That's all.
But whoever controls the food controls the economy.
Right.
Like Yosef.
16.
Finish this out, please.
And Yosef said, give your cattle, and I'll give you food for your cattle if money fails. And they brought their cattle unto Yosef, and Yosef gave them food in exchange for horses, and for the flocks, and for the herds, and for the asses. And he fed them with bread in exchange for all their cattle for that year. And when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year. And they said, we will not hide from our Lord how that all our money is spent. And the herds are my Lord's, and there is nothing left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us in our land for food, and we in our land will be bondmen unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land become not desolate. So Yosef bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field because the famine was sore upon them, and the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them city by city, from one end of the border of Egypt even to the other end thereof. Only the land of the priest he bought not, for the priest had a portion from Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their land. Then Yosef said unto the people, behold, I have bought you this day in your lands for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you, sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the ingathering that ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh, and the fourth part shall be yours for seed of the field, and for food, and for them of your household, and for food for your little ones. And they said, thou hast saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's bondmen. And Yosef made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt unto this day, that Pharaoh should have the fifth. Only the land of the priests became not Pharaoh's. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they got them possessions therein, and were fruitful and multiplied exceedingly. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Eternal thanks, praise, honor, glory be given to Adonai, God of our forefathers. I bless his name for this opportunity to stand before you this day. I pray that the Most High God might allow us all to be inspired to embrace the challenges that lie ahead and appreciate the success that he has gave us thus far. Shabbat shalom, shalom.